What is happening, everybody? Welcome to the Stokastic NBA Deeper Dive. As you come in, like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We've got, well, a couple different size slates. It is 7 games over on FanDuel. It's 5 games over on DraftKings. We are sponsored today by No House Advantage. We're going to be talking about them a little bit more as we go on. But if you guys do not have an account yet over at No House Advantage, for the new year, they have a new offer. It is now a $100 bonus when you sign up for the first time using our link over at No House Advantage. And also, get access to all kinds of overlay at NHA. Lots of contests that don't fill the entire way. So that's something you probably want to take advantage of when you do sign up. Once again, use our link to get up to that $100 bonus when you first sign up. Now, Adam, we've got an interesting NBA slate. Giannis was just ruled out of nowhere, but we've got FanDuel has stretched the slate to 7 games, DraftKings 5 games. Which of the two slates do you prefer in terms of the sizing?
I prefer DraftKings. I like slates where you just get pretty much all the games starting at the same time. Obviously easier with regard to not needing to late swap, but also just being done with it, like not having to wait around for that late game. So yeah, definitely prefer the DraftKings.
Yeah, and also I really didn't want these two slates to have massively different start times just from scheduling a show perspective. So FanDuel does start a little bit earlier, but we've got everything covered here. We've got the deep dive going to be going for the next hour, covering all 7 of the games. And after us, live before lock, they're going to be on from 2 to 3:30 Eastern time. But we're going to start by talking about this Indiana Pacers game against the Milwaukee Bucks. And now with the latest news that we have to Giannis, there's so many injuries on both sides of the game. And really, a lot of the best players are out. But starting with Indiana, Tyrese Halliburton is missing. Miles Turner is questionable. So this is a game that we only have to talk about from a FanDuel perspective because it's not on the DraftKings slate. But it's one that's obviously become massively important for FanDuel considering all the injuries. Now, we've seen a lot of ownership go to the Pacers in recent games due to the absence of Miles Turner in some of these spots and Tyrese Halliburton. So we've seen a lot of ownership go to guys like Mathurin and McConnell. And if you look at the ownership that just got updated over for FanDuel, we have a lot of ownership going to this game. Mathurin currently projected for 39% ownership. He's the second most popular player on the slate, most popular now, Drew Holiday. But who are the best options remaining from Indiana in the absence of Halliburton?
Yeah, I mean, that price tag on Mathurin is still pretty cheap at 5,600. We saw huge minutes from him 2 games ago. Last game, he didn't play as much. But, you're probably, if this game's competitive, getting at least 30 minutes, if not more, from Mathurin. He's averaged 1.01 DraftKings points per minute without Halliburton on the floor this year, 30.6% usage rate. So I still think that the price tag there looks good. I'm kind of surprised that TJ McConnell's pulling the ownership that he is on FanDuel. I thought he was a really good play on the last couple of slates when he was down around 4K. Even coming off the bench, you're expecting around 24 minutes, but he's about a fantasy point per minute guy without Halliburton on the floor, 1.06 FanDuel points per minute this year. So it made sense. Now at 5,900, I still think you're probably getting around 24 minutes from McConnell. It makes it, I think, a lot more difficult to get to him, especially because he is relatively popular. Buddy Hield, 6,700. He makes some sense, should play a lot of minutes here. Gets a little bit of a bump in usage, maybe. Only 286 minutes without Halliburton this year. Only a 20.2% usage rate, 13% assist percentage. If Turner is out, then you're taking a 24% usage guy off the floor, and you probably do see a bump for Hield. But one way or the other, he's going to look okay just because of the playing time you're likely to get. But outside of Mathurin, I'm just surprised by the ownership McConnell's getting.
Yeah, especially because, like you said, it's a lot of box score watching. Because if you look at the last 3 games, the fantasy point totals have been absurd for McConnell. 40 fantasy points, and talking about the FanDuel scoring because the only place this game is relevant for today. Last 3 games, 40 fantasy points, 37, 39. So I think a lot of people just look at it and say, like, oh, clearly he benefits in the absence of Halliburton, which he does. But these fantasy point totals are not at all sustainable because it's not like he's starting or playing big minutes. Like you just said, 24 minutes in back-to-back games for McConnell. If you give McConnell 24 minutes, you're expecting somewhere around mid-20s fantasy points, and it's kind of hard to reliably see the upside of $5,900. So relative to his ownership, he's one of my least favorite chalk plays on FanDuel. And I actually think Andrew Nembhard is a decent pivot as well, because if Nembhard plays really well, it's probably going to take away from McConnell. He's a little bit cheaper. And we've seen some big games from Nembhard as a starter. So for a third of the ownership, I like that pivot. What do you think of getting to Nembhard in tournaments?
Yeah, I agree with you. Nembhard's really interesting just because he's been, even when Tyrese Halliburton is out, when he shares the floor with TJ McConnell, he hasn't been very productive. But overall, without Halliburton on the floor, 0.86 FanDuel points per minute for Nembhard. He had that one massive game earlier in the year where both Halliburton and McConnell were out. But he's also just, even though I thought that when Halliburton went down, the field was sort of over projecting or sort of overestimating Nembhard, he still looked like a good value, and he has gotten kind of unlucky. He shot 2 for 16, I think it was, in the first game without Halliburton. Last game only played like 23 minutes. That was a blowout loss to Memphis. Like, you're probably getting 30 plus minutes from him in competitive games. And I don't know why he's getting less ownership, especially so much less ownership than McConnell at basically the same price, when realistically there's a good chance Nembhard plays 10 more minutes.
Yeah, and once again, like you said, the last 2 games have been really poor shooting games from Nembhard. 2 of 9 last game, 2 of 16 the game before. He played 34 minutes those 2 games. I think the minute ceiling is considerably higher for Nembhard than it is for McConnell, unless we were to get a starting lineup change in the upcoming 30, 45 minutes, whatever it may be. And then we've also got Miles Turner being questionable in the front court. I know you mentioned Buddy Hield being somebody who would see extra usage if Turner doesn't play. But what big men would be value options if Turner sits, if any?
You would likely see Isaiah Jackson move back into the starting lineup. He's a $4,800 power forward, likely to play mid to upper 20s if Turner is out. And he is a good point per minute guy. So even though that price tag has increased, he still would look like a good value if Turner sits. If Turner is in, then clearly you're not going there because he's just the backup center, if anything.
Yeah, and by the way, I should also mention that Goga Padadze is currently questionable. And by the way, Boss Bro, I hear you in the chat because he's saying, I'm not going to play Nembhard over McConnell. For me, as somebody who looks at the numbers and tries to project players, it's really hard to project McConnell for more than 24 minutes. And if you're projecting him for 24 minutes, which he's played in the last 2 games, he just ends up looking way overowned. And I just don't know how to project him higher, especially the way the field seems to be getting to him.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing about McConnell other than just saying, oh, well, he played good the other day. There's nothing that makes him look good at that salary, especially with the ownership. It would be one thing if, you were getting 20% ownership to Nembhard and like none to McConnell, and you wanted to say like, all right, well, McConnell still has a clear path to doing well, but that ownership is already there on McConnell. It just doesn't really make sense.
And now talking about the other side of the game, there is so much ownership coming into Milwaukee now. So if you guys didn't catch the news yet, Giannis was ruled out about 10 minutes before we started this show and really came out of nowhere. He was listed as probable on the injury report, went from probable to out. So here's what we currently have because we just got ownership updated. Jrue Holiday, the most popular player on FanDuel, projected for 42% ownership. Then we've got Pat Connaughton projected for 26. Jordan Nwora projected for 26. Brooke Lopez projected for 25% ownership. Bobby Portis projected for 24%. Grayson Allen also projected for 24%. So we're in a situation now where like half of the 15 most popular players are now coming from the Milwaukee Bucks. Number one, does this ownership make sense to you? And who are the highest priority guys to get to from Milwaukee?
Yeah, for the most part, I think that it does. Giannis being out obviously is a huge deal. You still don't have Chris Middleton either, so it's going to make Jrue look better. He's averaged 1.27 FanDuel points per minute without Giannis this year. Portis is at 1.21. Lopez is at 1.09 FanDuel points per minute. So all of that ownership makes sense. You're getting more solidified minutes for guys like Pat Connaughton and Grayson Allen as well. Jordan Nwora at 3,900 is kind of interesting just because he certainly could step into a bigger role, but not really a guarantee. We've seen plenty of times that doesn't happen. For example, last game that Giannis was out, he didn't play. So I don't know. I don't totally understand that ownership.
Yeah, if we look, and by the way, just anybody who's potentially going to benefit just seems to be getting a whole lot of ownership. But I totally agree with you as well. What do you expect the starting 5 to be?
Holiday, Allen, Connaughton, Portis, Lopez.
Yeah, that's what I'm expecting as well. And then is there anybody, and I know almost everybody on this team is picking up ownership now. I do think Jrue Holiday is the highest priority. But is there anybody that is not picking up a ton of ownership that you think is worth a dart play, or is just the ownership already there on everybody?
So one thing to clarify too, Joe Ingles played last game and isn't playing today. So that's why I do think Nwora is going to be in the rotation. It's just I don't think he necessarily has to play a lot of minutes. Like AJ Green, Beauchamp, Carter could certainly soak up a lot of those minutes. So that's why I'm a little bit concerned about Nwora's ownership. And then similarly, Javon Carter, 4,600, not getting any ownership, probably shouldn't. Beauchamp at 4K. I think he's an interesting pivot away from Wara just because you're getting 26% ownership to Wara, none to Beauchamp. Wara is a 0.8 FanDuel point per minute guy this year. Beauchamp's 0.7, and Beauchamp's ahead of him in the rotation. So I kind of think that's an interesting pivot.
By the way, Miles Turner is going to be a game time decision today, which really changes nothing. He went from being questionable, we didn't know his status, to questionable, and we still don't know his status, but we'll know it at a later point in time throughout the day. But is there anything else you want to add from this Milwaukee-Indiana game?
Nope.
All right, so let's move on to the next one. And now we're going to be talking about games that are included on both the DraftKings and the FanDuel slate. So the first and the last game of the slate only on FanDuel. All the other games are going to be on both slates. But the next one, Golden State Warriors, just the slightest of favorites against the Washington Wizards. Fairly high total in this game as well, 236 points. Tail end of a back-to-back, which for the Warriors means Klay Thompson will not be playing. He is resting, still not playing in back-to-back. Steph Curry, however, will be playing, with this being the tail end of a back-to-back. He recently returned from an injury, but the Warriors don't really seem to have any kind of real crazy restrictions on him. With Klay Thompson being out, who benefits the most from the Warriors?
So you should get Jordan Poole in the starting lineup. He will be playing alongside Steph, so not the most productive minutes for him, but certainly more playing time. And then you can see maybe a little bit of a bump in usage for Curry. Poole, assuming Poole replaces Thompson, that's not really a drop off in terms of usage, so I don't expect a massive bump, but maybe a little bit easier path to success for Curry.
Yeah, and the other thing too is when it comes to Curry, actually, let me see what his ownership is now that we have this update from the Bucks. So Curry, 20% owned on FanDuel, and he is sitting at 10% owned on DraftKings. There's a big difference in him between DraftKings and FanDuel in the price point. So he's 10,400 on DraftKings. FanDuel is only 9,200, and I think he was somebody who was going to be quite a bit popular, but that's now come down because of all the ownership going to Jrue Holiday. Steph Curry at $9,200, I think really should be more popular in this spot, especially with Klay Thompson sitting. So I really like getting to Steph on FanDuel 9,200. The upside there is pretty immense for him. So a priority spend up option for me on FanDuel for sure. As for the other players on the Warriors, that even somebody who doesn't benefit necessarily as much from the absence of Klay Thompson, but anybody in the front court, whether it's Draymond Green or Kevon Looney, are any of those guys players that you would prioritize today?
I don't think so. I see them pretty much as last guy in type pieces. Draymond, Looney, Wiggins, all pulling 7 to 9% ownership on DraftKings, and I think that makes sense. Green's likely to give you 32 to 34 minutes in this game. He's around a 0.9 fantasy point per minute guy, so he just sort of looks okay if you need somebody at that price range, but you're not building around him. I think same can be said for Wiggins, same can be said for Looney.
And then is there anything else to really say here? Curry clearly benefits the most. I know that Klay Thompson is out. And beyond that, though, Curry's been out for so long. It's kind of like Curry's thrown back in the picture. Wiggins was out for a while. He's thrown back into the picture. It's not like any of these role players really have value to me. Am I missing anything there?
No, I don't really think so. You still, DiVincenzo could play more minutes here at 5,400, but he's 5,400, so he's not going to look great. He's pulling 6% ownership. Anthony Lamb at 4,100, pulling 10%. I think that's an okay spot to go to. Like, he's likely to play 20 to 22 minutes, but certainly not very exciting.
So let's talk about your Washington Wizards on the other side, who are once again going to be missing Bradley Beal. And we've got not terrible price points on guys like Kyle Kuzma, Kristaps Porzingis, particularly on FanDuel. Kuzma projected, or not projected, his salary is $8,000. Kristaps Porzingis, $8,600. It is a little bit cheaper than we've seen in some other spots without Bradley Beal. Now, as far as DraftKings goes, DraftKings has priced these guys more aggressively. Kyle Kuzma, $8,800 on DraftKings, $9,100 for Kristaps Porzingis on DK. So starting with DK, Adam, what do you make of Kuzma and Porzingis as spend-up options? And then we'll talk about them on FanDuel, where they're considerably cheaper. But first, for DraftKings, is there still upside in those salaries?
Yeah, I think there's still upside because you're also just getting a lot of playing time as well. So I wouldn't say that they're really underpriced. Like, they're pretty much priced for Bradley Beal to be out at this point, but you do get a little bit of a bump in production from those guys. Porzingis around 1.3 fantasy points per minute without Beal on the floor this year, and he's likely to give you about 34 minutes. Kuzma's at 1.1 DraftKings points per minute, 29.5% usage rate without Beal. He's likely to play 36 minutes or so. So they still look good, and they're both pulling, 15 to 20% ownership, but they are priced pretty much for Beal to be out.
Yeah, and I certainly see that for DraftKings. FanDuel's where it's different though, because I was running lineups before this, and I get to a lot of Kyle Kuzma and Kristaps Porzingis on FanDuel. Once again, the salary difference is really, really a big one. We've got Kuzma 8,000 on FanDuel, so $800 cheaper than he is on DraftKings. Then we've got Porzingis 8,600, so $5 cheaper than he is on DraftKings. And then as for the ownership on these guys, that's also up as well. Kyle Kuzma is 27% owned on FanDuel. Kristaps Porzingis 31% owned. I think those are about reasonable ownership rates considering the absence of Bradley Beal. But Kuzma and Porzingis with their cheaper price points on FanDuel, how do they look compared to their DK salaries?
Yeah, I mean, the cheaper salaries are certainly going to make them look better. You also, on both sites, have Porzingis with power forward eligibility, which is nice as well. So I think it's just all it all looks correct. Like they're less expensive, so they certainly look like better plays. You're also getting, 27% ownership on FanDuel coming into Kuzma, 31% on Porzingis. So you're getting like twice as much ownership because they're cheaper, and that makes sense.
And then as for the rest of the players that we're looking at on the Wizards, I definitely think the highest priority here is going to be rostering Porzingis and Kuzma over on FanDuel. But outside of them, is there anybody who stands out for either DraftKings or FanDuel purposes? Because the rest of the role players have kind of been hard to nail down. There's times I've gone after Rui Hachimura lately that hasn't really worked out. But any of these role players that you do feel good about today?
So I think the point guards are interesting. Both Monte Morris and DeLon Wright pulling 18 to 20% ownership on DraftKings. They're just inexpensive. Wright's coming in at 4,800. Morris at 4,800. Wright coming in at 3,400. Without Beal on the floor this year, you've gotten 0.85 DraftKings points per minute from Morris. For DeLon Wright, you're at 0.93. One interesting note is that the other day, without Beal, you did have DeLon Wright and Monte Morris close alongside each other. So that is, another way they could potentially go here where it would make them just, both look good. The fact that you can kind of project maybe 30 minutes, 29, 30 minutes to Morris and then like 22 to Wright instead of 18 is going to make Wright look a little bit better. I still wouldn't really want to play them together because for the most part, they're not going to share the floor. But the fact that we saw them close together the other day does make me just like the combination a little bit more.
Yeah, no, I do think that makes sense. And obviously, if they're going to do that more frequently, then it also creates more playing time upside for both those guys. We've now seen 25 minutes in back-to-back games for DeLon Wright, but we hardly ever saw him play north of 20 minutes. So actually all the games, and he missed a bunch of time due to injury, but when he came back, he was playing like 15, 16 minutes per game. Now we're seeing minutes, like you said, a little bit higher with the more willingness to play Monte Morris and DeLon Wright together. 25 minutes in back-to-back games for Wright. Any other talking points for you from Washington?
The ownership on Daniel Gafford is kind of interesting. He only played like 16 minutes last game, but as a starter this year in the games Porzingis has played, he's averaging around 24 minutes. If he does get back to that here, I think he's going a little bit under owned at only 5%.
Yeah, Gafford is 5% on DraftKings, 2% on FanDuel. It's kind of funny the way some of the different salaries work because Gafford is way more expensive on FanDuel, cheaper on DraftKings, whereas we know we were talking about before Kuzma and Porzingis being a lot more expensive on DraftKings and FanDuel, so just the inverse. But yeah, I think that makes sense if we could see the potential extended minutes for Gafford, and then especially on DraftKings where it's a smaller slate as well. It's only 5 games, so if you're looking for somebody who's reasonably priced that has upside if things go in his favor, we're not that far away from Gafford being this exact same price and being like 30% owned 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, exactly. And, for what it's worth, this isn't like some great play or anything. I just ran a crunch while we were talking. And if the slate started right now, I'd only have like 2% Gafford on DraftKings. So it's not like I think, there's some, huge edge, like you have to be playing Daniel Gafford. But I do just think that ownership is a little bit low considering the full range of outcomes for him. And, if he does get 24 to 26 minutes, he's very likely to outperform the salary.
So let's move to New York, where we have the Toronto Raptors taking on the Knicks. And Fred VanVleet is questionable. And we've seen some good health for the Raptors for a little bit, but Fred VanVleet has once again been worn down a little bit by the drill sergeant, Nick Nurse. So if VanVleet is not able to play, who do you anticipate moving into the starting lineup? Because I think we should feel pretty good about somebody playing a whole bunch of minutes if VanVleet doesn't play.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Flynn would start or if they would just move Hernan Gomez into the starting lineup. We see a lot of times them just go with another wing, another big kind of, no matter who is out. But either way, I think you see more playing time from Malachi Flynn if VanVleet is out. If he starts, then clearly you can feel good about the playing time. You can project him for more minutes. But even if he ends up coming off the bench without VanVleet, I think at 3K flat, he's going to end up looking like a good value.
And then if Van Vliet does end up playing, how would he look to you as a potential option?
I think he looks good. Toronto pricing is really interesting because it's a situation where they were never truly priced to be playing north of 40 minutes like they frequently were. And so then when Nick Nurse changed up this rotation and stopped playing them huge minutes, they didn't really go to overpriced. They just moved back to being like correctly priced. But then now the salaries have dropped as a result of them not playing as many minutes. So I think that they're back to being underpriced here. And the ownership reflects that. Fred VanVleet only pulling about 5% at 7,600. He only played 26 minutes last game, but more often than not, you're still going to get in the mid 30s from him. So at that price tag and low ownership, he's going to be appealing. Trent, 5,500, only played 20 minutes last game, but again, more often than not, you're going to get low 30s from him. Barnes, Anunoby, Siakam, those guys all look good as well. So I think the starting five here is just going to continue to be appealing because the price tags have come down. We also have ownership coming into Precious Achiuwa at 3,300, which I don't totally understand. He played like 27 minutes last game, which, obviously if he does that again, that's going to be appealing. But the thing you have to keep in mind is that Gary Trent Jr. played 20 minutes last game and Van Vliet played 26. Siakam also only played 34. So like, it's really easy to see where Achiuwa could end up losing minutes and, playing mid to upper teens, in which case you're not going to want him. So if the slate started right now, I'd have like 4 to 5% Achiuwa as opposed to the 11 to 12% we have projected.
Yeah, for what it's worth, when I ran lineups before this, I had 2% of Precious Achiuwa on DK. The player I got to the most from the Raptors, and this was even assuming that Fred VanVleet was in, was Gary Trent ended up coming into a good bulk of my lineups at a 5,500 price point on DraftKings. And just before we're talking about the Wizards and some of the difference in salaries, well, Gary Trent is $6,900 on FanDuel, which I think is about a fair price point, maybe a little bit high. But he's only $5,500 on DraftKings. So assuming his minutes bounce back, I think he's a little bit underpriced on DK. And then if we do see Fred VanVleet ruled out, I think Trent probably becomes one of the most popular players on the slate.
Yeah, I agree with you because then there is some usage opening up for him as well.
So Gary Trent is somebody who I would definitely be targeting kind of no matter what, but especially if Fred VanVleet is out. How about the other guys? Siakam, Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby. Would any of these guys be priority plays if VanVleet is ruled out, or are they more just guys who, like, if they're in some lineups, you'd be cool with it?
Yeah, I think it's more so that VanVleet's usage isn't as high this year as it was last year, so you're not seeing as big of a bump. If he gets ruled out, I do think Gary Trent Jr. on DraftKings would end up looking great. You would probably get more Siakam, Anunoby, Barnes than you are right now, but I still don't think they would necessarily have any of them just like jump to the top of the list.
And then is there anything else, any kind of value plays that we should maybe be looking out for if VanVleet doesn't play, or do we just need a starting lineup?
I think we need a starting lineup, but again, like if VanVleet is out and even if he's not starting, I think 3K Malachi Flynn is going to look good. He's been in the rotation recently. That's one of the changes that Nick Nurse made. You got 19 minutes from him off the bench last game with VanVleet playing. I think that if VanVleet's out one way or the other, you're getting at least low 20s from Malachi Flynn.
And if you guys haven't done it yet, do us a favor, like the video and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Other side of the game, we've got the New York Knicks, and this has been a really strong regular season team to this point. We've seen some big games out of Julius Randle, some big games as of late out of Jalen Brunson. RJ Barrett is back from injury now. The salaries keep going up for some of these Knicks guys. Jalen Brunson in particular, who's now 8,500 after he was 7,000 on DraftKings a couple of weeks ago. Over on FanDuel, Brunson is priced all the way up to $8,900. So Brunson and Randle continually putting up big games. The salaries are also going up. Are you still willing to pay a premium for guys like Randle and Brunson?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the salaries are kind of just in line with the minutes that they're playing. We've seen Obi Toppin back in the rotation, but he's just been playing like 8 to 10 minutes behind Randle. So you're still likely to get 38 to 40 from him. He is expensive, but you also don't really have pay up options on this slate. No Giannis anymore on FanDuel, no Giannis ever on DraftKings. You have, Steph in that price range, but there's just not that upper tier of stars. So that makes it a little bit easier to get to Randle as well. He's pulling 10%. Ownership on DraftKings. If the slate started right now, I'd have around 5%, but that's not some spot where I'm looking at it and saying like, oh, I don't think Julius Randle should be popular. It's just that's kind of how it worked out in the crunch I ran. I wouldn't be surprised if that's just a different number by the time lock rolls around because he does make sense as a play, just given how many minutes he's going to play and how well he's played this year. Jalen Brunson, same kind of thing. That salary has really jumped, but the guy's playing 40 plus minutes like every night. So it kind of has to. And he's a good, 1.1 fantasy point per minute guy as well. I'd have around 14% of him if the slate started, which is pretty much in line with the field. RJ Barrett didn't close last game, but typically you're getting around 40 minutes from him. We saw him play like 41 right out of the gate in his return. So 6,900 for him is a decent price tag. And then the guy I'm getting to the most, Mitchell Robinson, projected for 18% ownership on DraftKings. If the slate started right now, I'd have about 30% Mitchell Robinson. He's just been playing a ton. And on the one hand, it's Mitchell Robinson and you're just waiting for it to end and come crashing down. And, he plays 20 minutes and fouls out. But he's done a better job of avoiding foul trouble recently. Tibbs is playing him huge minutes when he does. I think you really just have to be projecting him north of 30 minutes at this point, because otherwise you're just leaving too much on the table, knowing that when he's not in foul trouble, he's giving you 34, 35, 36 minutes. So it just makes him look really, really good at that salary. And it is another reason why, like going back to the Daniel Gafford conversation, I think the ownership on Gafford is interesting, but I'm not getting to a lot of him just because I'm getting so much Mitchell Robinson at that same price point.
Yeah, and to back up what you said before, last 5 games, these are the minutes for Mitchell Robinson. 34 minutes, 28 minutes. That was a game he fouled out in. And then before that, 38 minutes, 37 minutes, 35 minutes, 35-minute game, another one he fouled out in. But he's a good pointsman and fantasy producer. If you're going to be giving Mitchell Robinson over 30 minutes, which, like you said, I think is warranted at this point, it's hard to not make him somebody to be overweight to, at least for me when I was running lineups on both DraftKings and FanDuel. Now, outside of Randall and Brunson's pay-up options, I agree with you. Mitchell Robinson is the player I'm currently getting the most exposure to. Is there anybody else that stands out from the Knicks?
I don't really think so. I mean, we saw Emmanuel quickly close the last game, play 34 minutes. He closed in place of Barrett. Clearly, that's not going to happen all that often. Quentin Grimes has been playing huge minutes. He's only 5K, shooting guard, small forward, not getting a lot of ownership. So he's another one where, like, you look at it on the surface and it's just like, oh, that's kind of interesting because he's just not getting ownership and he's going to play a ton. But then also, if the slate started right now, I'd have 4%. So it's not like I can sit here and, really harp on him being a great play. It's just, one way you can potentially differentiate in a lineup here or there.
Yeah, and then as of right now, clean injury report for the Knicks. Nothing else to talk about as far as that is concerned. So let's move on to the New Orleans Pelicans against the Cleveland Cavaliers. And Pelicans, not a healthy team. Zion Williamson, he remains out. Brandon Ingram, it seems like he's getting close to returning, but then he just ends up getting ruled out every day. But I think maybe sometime this week he'll be back in action. But in addition to that, Herb Jones is questionable. So this team has just been so thin on depth because of all these guys that have been getting ruled out for the team, and especially guys like Zion and Ingram, who typically play big minutes. So Herb Jones is one of the players that stepped up and has played extended minutes. If he is also ruled out, who, if anybody, is a cheap guy that you want to be getting to from New Orleans?
If Jones is out, you're probably going to get Dyson Daniels in the starting lineup again. That's not super useful from a fantasy standpoint, but he can play mid-20s minutes. He is 3,300, so it's a potential value piece if Jones is out. If Jones is in, I'm expecting around 30 minutes from him. I'm expecting around 30 minutes from Trey Murphy, and then probably a couple extra minutes from Najee Marshall, who's been the most productive of that trio without Ingram or Zion on the floor. He's pulling 23% ownership. That seems a little bit high. I'm getting to like 14 right now, and I do think that even though he projects the best, having a 23% ownership projection for Marshall compared to 6% for Jones and Murphy, that's a spot where you can certainly, in some tournament lineups, just pivot and hope that you run into the good Trey Murphy game or the good Herb Jones game, even though, Marshall does project as the best option of the three.
Yeah, and then if Herb Jones was to play, is he somebody you want to get to? Because he's somebody who I think could be playing extended minutes that the field just might not play if he gets ruled out after the slate starts, or at least close to the start of the slate, because this is, at least for DraftKings purposes, first game to lock on the slate. FanDuel, it's in the second wave of games. But would he be interested in Herb Jones if he is active?
I'd pretty much be in line with the field. I'd have about 5% right now if the slate started. I think the most interesting talking point for Jones is what I was saying before, where it's just like in an individual lineup, if you are on Najee Marshall and you have a bunch of other popular plays, it makes some sense to just say, oh, well, I'll just save some ownership and hope to run good on Herb Jones. But he doesn't project great. He's not a very good point per minute guy, but he is 4,500. He's cheap. I'm pretty much just in line with the field.
And now let's talk about CJ McCollum as a pay-up option. We've seen some big upside from him in these recent games without Zion Williamson and without Brandon Ingram, but his salary has gone way up now. So he's $9,600 on DraftKings. He's $9,100 on FanDuel. But also nobody's playing him. He's 1% and 2% owned across those two sites. So obviously we're paying a premium for CJ McCollum, but does the low ownership make it worthwhile in large field tournaments?
I have a difficult time getting there. Like I get the upside. It's CJ McCollum playing without Zion, playing without Ingram. He's like a 1.3 DraftKings point per minute guy. He's likely to give you 35, 36 minutes. He's only 2% owned. The issue is just that he's $9,600. So you're paying full freight for him. Like you're paying a little bit more than you are for Trae Young. You're paying more than you are for Donovan Mitchell. There's a lot of other guards that you can get to. And it's a pretty unappealing matchup here against Cleveland as well. So all of that just makes it difficult to get there, even at the low ownership. If the slate started right now, I'd have about 2%. So just right there with the field. Certainly not like a bad play. It's CJ McCollum. He's got a very high ceiling. It's just extremely difficult to build around.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. It's somebody who I look at and go, oh, look, 1% own CJ McCollum on FanDuel, 2% on DraftKings. I think you could always make a case that it'd be under owned just based on some of the upside we've seen from him. But then I run lineups and just he doesn't project all that well relative to his price point. And a lot of it does have to do with the matchup that you were mentioning. The Cleveland Cavaliers, like we've talked about a lot this year, they're dead last in the NBA in pace. Their defensive efficiency, it's fallen from first to second. But either way, they're only, 0.3 of a point per 100 possessions behind the Memphis Grizzlies. So you got the team that's second overall in the NBA in adjusted defensive efficiency, last in the league in pace. It's a tough spot, and we're paying the most expensive price point I could ever remember seeing from CJ McCollum, like even dating back to the Portland days when he was playing games without Damian Lillard. I can't remember seeing him $96, $9,100. So CJ McCollum is definitely going to be difficult for me to get to. Jonas Valanciunas, though, does have a little bit more reasonable of a price tag, especially on DraftKings, where he is he's $7,400 on FanDuel, and then on DraftKings, $6,800 for Valanciunas. So pick up some ownership there, 14%. We have seen some extended minutes as of late that we never saw at the beginning of the year for Valanciunas. So how do you like him as a play in the mid-range?
I think that he's owned pretty much correctly. He's certainly risky here because for the most part, we know that they don't like playing him alongside Larry Nance. Even last game where Jovel did play 30 minutes, Nance just played 18 as the backup. And that's scary because more often than not, Nance is going to play more than 18 minutes. But even if you project around, 25, 26 minutes from Jovel, he's still going to look good just because he's about a 1.2 fantasy point per minute guy without Ingram or Zion. Even if you knock that a little bit for the difficult matchup with Cleveland, he's still going to look good. And then there is some chance that they do play alongside each other, especially if Herb Jones ended up being out. You do have this big Cleveland front court where you have Evan Mobley and Jared Allen sharing the floor. So if they want to, you could get a few minutes of Nance alongside Jovel, which is just good for both of them. The issue is that Jackson Hayes has also been in the rotation, so it's likely that he just still soaks up most of those backup minutes. But the matchup at least opens the door for maybe a few minutes of them alongside each other, which does just make Jovel's playing time a little bit safer, I guess.
Can you believe that not everybody knows what a cryo chamber is?
I mean, Josh just sounding very dumb.
Yeah, I mean, I think you really hit the nail on the head when I'm looking in the YouTube comments, and I see right here from Adam here, right here, he's talking about cryo chambers. You fucking moron at Josh Engleman. I mean, I think that that's a very poignant point, and I mean, I don't even know how we could be employing people who don't know what cryo chambers are. I wouldn't even be able to do the shows if I wasn't able to sit in my cryo chamber after all of them and make sure that I'm really, fully recovered 100% for each show. It's a pivotal part of our process around here. It makes me think Josh isn't doing all his work.
Yeah, especially because I know Josh actually does freeze himself. So it's kind of disappointing that he doesn't know what we're talking about.
We just got some news, by the way. Fred VanVleet will play today. He's recovered because he sat in his cryo chamber. Herb Jones apparently did not. He has just been ruled out. So let's just really quickly circle back on that because we were just talking about the New Orleans Pelicans and Herb Jones. But just to reiterate, now that Herb Jones is officially not going to be playing today, who do you anticipate will start in his place?
Probably Dyson Daniels. We got him starting last game. He played 25 minutes. Certainly could play a little bit more. He had some foul trouble in that game. So at 3,300, I think that there's a path to success for him. I don't mind using him here and there. Just, it'll open some other stuff up. Especially also, we got the news that VanVleet is probable. So the Malachi Flynn 3K piece appears to have gone out the window. But then we got the $3,300 Daniels piece moving in.
And then one other thing too about Daniels, if this game was to be a blowout, which I mean, there's some chance of, it has the widest spread of any of the games, at least on the DraftKings main slate, 7 points. Would you anticipate Daniels being somebody that would play in garbage time?
Probably. He's, I think, a rookie, first round pick. Just the kind of guy that you would expect him sort of to just soak up whatever NBA minutes he can get. So I think there's a good chance he'd be out there. One other thing potentially with Jones being out is Jose Alvarado should get or is likely to get more minutes now as well. He's only 4K. It's kind of like the TJ McConnell play of the last few days, where McConnell was 4K and playing like 24 minutes off the bench at a fantasy point per minute rate. It's the same kind of thing with Jose Alvarado. So, played 30 minutes last game. You're not projecting that, but it's on the table. And I think from a median standpoint, you're probably getting around 24 minutes. So I do like getting him a bit as well.
And we just got the starting lineup for the Warriors. No real surprise with Klay Thompson out is going to be Jordan Poole moving into the starting lineup. So that starting five: Curry, Poole, Wiggins, Draymond Green, and Kevon Looney. Anything else you want to add from the Pelicans or from the Cavs side or from the Pelican side of this game?
No.
Okay, so let's talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers. And this is a team that I've really found tricky to get to when they've been healthy this year, because it's such a deep team with guys who really are good fantasy producers, and a lot of them cut into each other as well. So Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, they each individually have upside, but it's hard to really rely on either of them in a significant way when both of them are healthy. Now I've got Jared Allen, Evan Mobley. They're both good to go in the front court. Ricky Rubio is now in the mix. He's going to be limited to around 15 minutes, but still, it's somebody who's, when he's on the court, is going to have the ball in his hands. Does anything really stand out to you from Cleveland? Because there aren't any individual players I get to a ton of exposure to here.
I'm actually getting to quite a bit. Jared Allen in particular, if the slate started right now, and again, this is with a crunch that had Herbert Jones in, so it's not perfect. But if the slate started right now, Allen would actually be my third highest owned guy on DraftKings. I have like 40%. I'm getting to like 25% Darius Garland, 20 to 25% Evan Mobley. I think all three of those guys look good. I'm a little concerned about Darius Garland's playing time. He played about 34 minutes or so last game. The game before that, we saw him only play like 14 minutes in the first half. It's coincided with Rubio's return, but I'm not completely convinced that it is just because of Rubio. They've been sharing the floor quite a bit. So I think that you're just going to continue to see Garland live in that like 34 to 36 minute range, but it has been slightly concerning the down tick in minutes. But at 7,500, he's still just very, very fairly priced in a pretty good matchup. 9,200 for Donovan Mitchell is certainly a reasonable salary as well. I'm not getting to nearly as much of him as I am some of these other guys, but he's projected for 16% ownership. I think that's fine. Probably a little bit too high. Karis LeVert still playing big minutes. The problem for him is just that most of those minutes are going to be, or a lot of those minutes are going to be with Garland and Mitchell on the floor. They're pretty much all going to be with at least one of those guys on the floor. So you get LeVert taking a back seat as opposed to the Karis LeVert that, dominates the ball and has a high usage rate when both of those guys are out. So, as a $4,900 shooting guard, small forward option, pulling 8% ownership, I think that's reasonable. That's about where he should be.
And by the way, just to reiterate something, because I was looking at my lineups, I did not get to Allen much in my FanDuel run, but I did on DraftKings. So I was looking at my FanDuel ownership where I only had 4% of Jared Allen. But yeah, DraftKings also, because of the price point difference, a lot of players with bigger salary gaps between DraftKings and FanDuel today than we would typically see. But Jared Allen, $7,400 on FanDuel, but only $5,900 on DraftKings. So I do agree that he's somebody who makes sense there, and I kind of overlooked that when I was introing the Cavs before. But then what do you make of Evan Mobley as well? Because he's somebody with power forward and center eligibility on DraftKings, a little bit more expensive than Jared Allen, but is also fairly popular. We've got Jared Allen being more popular as 27% owned piece, but still, we do see Evan Mobley being a guy who's projected for 21% ownership in our latest update that we have. So what do you make of Evan Mobley as also being a fairly popular option?
I think he should be. He was in massive foul trouble 2 games ago, so didn't play as many minutes as normal. Last game, he lost a little bit of playing time, still got to about 31 and a half minutes. On average, you're going to get 33, 34 minutes from him. He's around a 0.9 to 1 fantasy point per minute guy at just 6,300. So he's pulling 21% ownership. I'm basically exactly in line with that as well.
And then would you have any issue with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley being in the same lineup, or would you be setting any kind of rules in Fantasy Cruncher to try to limit the amount of lineups they appear in together?
No, I wouldn't worry about it. Like they're going to play a lot of minutes alongside each other. Obviously they both start. I think if I set any rule regarding the front court, it would probably just be like a max 2 of Allen, Mobley, Kevin Love. But you also probably don't even need to set that because I can't imagine that all 3 of those guys are like ever showing up in the same lineup.
And then is there anything else as far as role players go on Cleveland that we should be mentioning?
I don't think so. Briefly mentioned Karis LeVert, briefly mentioned Kevin Love at 4,300. Love just sort of at that price point where it's not hard for him to just put up a massive game if he happens to get more playing time because of like Mobley or Allen foul trouble, but also certainly a very low floor and pretty low chances of success.
So let's talk about the Miami Heat and the Atlanta Hawks. So we've got 2 games left on the DraftKings slate to talk about, and then the final one that's going to be FanDuel only. As far as the Heat go, it's a team that there's always somebody who's out for this Miami Heat team. I don't know how many games they've played with an entire roster healthy, but feels like maybe 5 at most. And we've got no Kyle Lowry for them today. In addition, Caleb Martin is questionable. But in the absence of Lowry, we've got Tyler Hero. He's expected to play today. Jimmy Butler. He's had some big games as of late. Bam Adebayo. Do you like any of the pay-up options for Miami?
Not really. Bam's the only one really pulling ownership. He's 20%. I get it. He's 8,700 on DraftKings. I would be getting around 20%. So I think that is fine. But outside of that, nothing that really stands out. Butler at 9K, 8% owned. Tyler Hero coming back does have at least somewhat of a negative impact there. Bam playing has a negative impact as well. Hero at 8,200 is priced probably where he should be, if not a little bit too high for Bam and Butler both being in. So outside of Bam, I don't really see much from Miami.
Yeah, and with Caleb Martin being ruled out, would that open up any kind of role player, or is it just kind of dead with Butler and Hero both healthy?
Yeah, I think it's mostly dead. Like if Martin is out, you can probably project a couple extra minutes for Gabe Vincent. Max Strus should play more. But the problem is that the salaries on these guys have just all increased as a result of them playing with 8 guys for 2 or 3 games. So now that you're getting Hero back, not only are you getting a high usage guy that does some playmaking, does some rebounding, you're also just getting somebody that plays mid to upper 30s in minutes and is going to take minutes away from these other guys who are getting more expensive.
So let's talk about the Atlanta Hawks side of the game then. And for Atlanta, we do have Clint Capella back, but he's going to be on a minutes restriction. I'm not exactly sure whether he's going to start or not, but when you see Capella minutes restriction, what are you expecting from him from a playing time perspective?
So if he starts, I think it's likely that you're getting some sort of like 24-24 split between him and Okongwu. If they start Okongwu, then I think you project Okongwu to play, 28, 30 minutes, and you're probably getting like 18 to 20 off the bench for Capella. So that is news that I think is going to be telling. If you get Okongwu in the starting lineup, I still think he's playable at 5,600, but assuming that Capella gets the start, then I think it's likely you're just getting 24 minutes or so from both guys, and it would make it just not very appealing to get to either one.
And does this have any kind of impact on John Collins? I know he's not projected to be particularly popular, but still he's expected to be in some lineups. Collins expected for 8% ownership over on DraftKings. FanDuel, we've got John Collins not there. He's only projected for 1%, but 6K price tag. There are some players or some DFS players who are gravitating towards Collins. Is he hurt at all by the return of Clint Capella?
Yeah, I think it's a negative for Collins just because it reduces the likelihood of Collins getting any backup center minutes. And those are really important minutes for John Collins from a fantasy standpoint. So now with Capella back, you're likely to get a combined 48 minutes from him and Okongwu, which means all of the Collins minutes are coming at the 4. It's bad for his rebounding. It's bad for his fantasy production overall. So you're still, at 6K, Collins is certainly still playable. He's projected for 8% ownership. We have him with a 14% chance of being optimal. So actually going a little bit over owned. If the slate started right now, I'd have around 7%. So pretty much in line with the field. It's a negative for him that Capella is coming back, but he is still pretty cheap. He also just hasn't been very good from a fantasy standpoint this year. Josh sent me a message earlier. He said in games where Murray, Trey, Hunter, and Collins have all started, John Collins is shooting 18.7% from 3, which is just like unbelievably bad and impossible to explain. He shot 23% from 3 this season. He was at 38, 40, and 40 over the past 3 years. So just a really poor season shooting wise from Collins so far. The usage rate is down. Like in the games where Murray and Young have played, he has a lower usage rate than DeAndre Hunter. Like he's basically become the 4th option here, and he's been inefficient. So there's a lot of negatives for Collins, but you kind of also just keep coming back to like, yeah, but it's John Collins and he's 6K, so he's certainly playable.
And then let's talk about the pay up options. So the higher price guards that we have on Atlanta, there's Trey Young, there's DeJounte Murray. I don't really see either of them as projecting especially well on this slate. Fairly tough matchup against the Miami Heat. Also, the total in this game, 223.5, fairly low relative to other Atlanta Hawks games. But Trey Young, DeJounte Murray, are either of them players that you are going to be prioritizing?
No, not prioritizing. They just sort of fall into lineups, 5 to 10% of the time for me. We have 10% ownership coming into Murray, 12% to Young. I'm slightly below the field on both guys, but kind of like I was saying with Julius Randle, that's not any sort of like I don't mean that like a negative way. Like I think they're bad plays. It's just that's sort of how it worked out. Certainly would be happy if I get a little bit more, but they're just sort of last guy in type pieces. Not in the sense that they're bad. Obviously they're both very good. You're happy to get there. It's just that you have players that you're prioritizing over them.
And then one thing that is a little surprising looking at this team, DeAndre Hunter projected for 16% ownership. It actually was over 20% before we had started the show, but DeAndre Hunter is somebody who looks like the field is gravitating towards. Does that make sense to you, or does it seem a little high?
It seems high. I think the reasoning is likely just that you end up a lot of times in your lineup builds just needing, like a 4,700, 5K small forward, and Hunter fits the bill. So he kind of just ends up falling into those lineups. As a result, we do have him projected to go a little bit over owned, only 12% chance of being optimal. I'd be under the field if the slate started right now. But I think that's why the ownership is there. It's not that there's anything about DeAndre Hunter that, the field or projections or anything are like hitting on and making him stand out. I think it's just likely that once you put in, the centers you want, the guards that you want, it's just like, oh, well, I need a small forward at 5K and DeAndre Hunter's right there.
Yeah, also something that could change based on how some of the other injuries break, and some of them that we're going to be talking about in the next game for sure. But anything else you want to mention from the Atlanta Hawks?
Nope.
So let's talk about BetMGM then, where if you guys haven't signed up yet, you can get 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum when you sign up BetMGM by using our link. But in addition to that, you're going to get an insurance bet of up to $1,000. So even if your first bet loses, you're going to get an insurance bet up to $1,000. But you only need to make a deposit of $10 to get your 2 free months of Stokastic Plus Platinum. And we've got our new tools over at our site. They're going to help you make some money over at BetMGM. BetPro, the newest prop betting tool that we have on the site that Adam's been making NBA videos about every day, just finding some of the best different props that you could bet across different sports books. So make sure to check out Adam's content that he's now doing on the BetPro tool. But also, if you guys want to check that out, it's really useful. It's just projections for all the individual players and just using those to identify what the best prop bets are of the day and the best books to bet them at. You get 1 week free access by clicking on the link we have below and signing up at BetPro for the first time. But let's move on to one of the games that makes this slate really tricky. Utah and Minnesota. And just in general, how are you going to handle the news here, Adam? Because there are a ton of injuries in this spot, and it's the last game to lock for DraftKings. So for Minnesota, Edwards is questionable. Gobert is questionable. Taurean Prince is questionable. We look at the other side of the game when it comes to Utah. Kelly Olynyk is out, and then Lauri Markkanen is questionable. So what is this going to do in terms of how you build your lineups if these guys are questionable heading into lock?
Yeah, I mean, it's tricky. My approach is going to be to just have the questionable guys in and then late swap if I need to. Hopefully we get this news before lock. But one nice thing is that even if you project all the questionable guys from this game in, you still end up getting a ton of this game. Like I'm getting a lot of Kyle Anderson, a lot of Anthony Edwards, a lot of Taurean Prince, getting to a lot of the Utah side as well. So it is going to be pretty easy. Like you're going to have a lot of roster spots available to swap around, which is nice. It would be more difficult if this was a spot where it's like, oh, well, if they're in, I don't like anything. And if they're out, you have some of the best plays on the slate. So that makes it, a little bit easier to deal with. I think getting to a lot of Gobert as well. So, if he gets ruled out, it's very easy to, get to Naz Reid and all of that. So I'm actually not overly concerned about it for that reason, but it is, it's just a piece where you're going to want to make sure that you're around to late swap if we don't get that news before lock.
So let's start by talking about Utah. And like I just mentioned, Lauri Markkanen is questionable. He is now pretty much neck and neck with SGA for most improved player of the year. Been a really strong year for Markkanen. I personally think he should be an all-star really without much doubt. But if he's not able to go, he's had a big role for this Utah team. He's playing big minutes. There's been a lot of usage there. Who would step up in his place if he's not able to play?
Yeah, so it kind of has two different impacts. One in terms of usage opening up, and then 2 in terms of playing time, because Markkanen plays so many minutes as well. So in terms of usage, if you take Markkanen off the floor, you expect to see more usage for Jordan Clarkson. He has a 31% usage rate without Markkanen out there. Malik Beasley's at 22.2%. Conley doesn't really see a bump. He's still at 19%. But I think the big piece would be that Jordan Clarkson's usage rate goes up and he just looks a lot better. But then also in terms of playing time, if Markkanen's in, I expect that we see Beasley starting in place of Kelly Olynyk with Jared Vanderbilt coming off the bench. If Markkanen is out, you're likely to see Vanderbilt move into the starting lineup, which, one, that's good for Vanderbilt's playing time, but 2, it is also good for Walker Kessler's playing time, because the more minutes that Vanderbilt is going to be playing alongside Kessler, the more minutes that Kessler can stay on the floor. We saw 32 minutes from him last game. I think if Markkanen is out, projecting around 28, 30 minutes from Kessler makes sense. If he's in, you're probably closer to like 25, 26 minutes. So it has an impact there as well, even though it's not like Kessler's going to be taking on a bunch of usage.
And then if Markkanen plays, number one, would you like Markkanen? He's very expensive now. But then also, would anybody else still look like a strong option from Utah? Because, Markkanen is such a high usage guy.
Yeah, if he plays, I have trouble getting to him. He is really, really good, like you were saying, and I think it's just a weird situation. Like he deserves to be expensive, but 9,400 is also just difficult to pay for him. But he's been one of the best offensive players in the league so far this year, and he plays huge minutes. Like the price tag is warranted, at least to the extent that, he shouldn't still be this like 8K guy that he was earlier in the year, but it makes him really difficult to get to. I do think getting some other Utah pieces is still fine though. Mike Conley is cheap, likely to play around 30 minutes in a good spot. So he's getting a good amount of lineups for me, getting to a good amount of Malik Beasley as well. Again, just cheap, useful positional eligibility. So those are the two guys I'm getting to the most. Walker Kessler would be third from Utah, with Markkanen projected in. If he's out, then you're just going to get more Clarkson. You're going to get more Kessler. You're going to start getting to Vanderbilt as well.
And then I don't even know what to make of the Minnesota side right now because Edwards is questionable. Gobert is questionable. Taurean Prince is questionable. We know by now that if Gobert is out, we like a Naz Reid. He's crushed as a starter this year. But there's also so many key guys that are questionable, like with Edwards, Gobert, and then Prince would potentially be a value option we would look at. That I feel like we need more information here, but at the same time, too, the game starts in a couple hours, so it's a little tricky. But what kind of takeaways do you have from Minnesota right now, if any?
So if we assume everybody is in, then there's still just a lot to like here. It's a appealing matchup against Utah. You have a ton of ownership coming into this team. Anthony Edwards is somehow down to $8,300 with shooting guard and small forward eligibility. He's clearly a very high upside option. If the slate started right now, I'd have about 65% of him on DraftKings. If Gobert were to be ruled out, not only do you get Naz Reid looking fantastic, and as somebody that you're just going to try and jam into as many lineups as you can, especially because he has power forward eligibility, good point per minute guy, but also has played huge minutes when he has started. You also see Edwards most likely play a bit better because you don't have Rudy Gobert crowding the paint. You have better spacing when Naz Reid's on the floor, which is important for Anthony Edwards. So that would be a nice bump. Taurean Prince is 3K flat, assuming that he is playing. He's likely to play mid-20s minutes, could play more if you start getting guys ruled out. Kyle Anderson is very inexpensive. He'd actually be my highest owned guy if the slate started right now at 5,200. He's pulling 16% ownership. Jaden McDaniels looks fine. D'Angelo Russell's only 6,700. I don't know why the pricing on this team got so inexpensive, but they just have a bunch of really good plays across the board. Gobert, if he plays at 7,400, we have projected for 13% ownership with a 20% chance of being optimal. He's somebody I like getting over the field on if he's in. And then again, if he ends up being out, that just very, very easily turns into Naz Reid.
I think what's screwing up particularly the Edwards price is that he's had 2 games in the last week and a half he hasn't finished due to injury.
Yeah.
So I think that just kind of screws up the pricing algorithm where it's just like, oh, look, Anthony Edwards had a game where he scored 17 fantasy points, another one where he scored 30. It's like, yeah, we played 22 and 24 minutes in those games. Who knows? Because none of us really know exactly how the pricing algorithm works. I would assume that's what it is, but I hear you. If Anthony Edwards ends up playing, he's much too cheap, particularly over on DraftKings. And see, what is his current ownership at? Edwards projected for 39%, so he's expected to be the most popular player. Over on DraftKings, FanDuel at 8,400, projected for 32% ownership. So he's going to be popular, but I wouldn't be surprised if that ownership is much lower if he's still questionable heading into lock. So I'm not too concerned about it. But if Edwards doesn't play, what could we expect from D'Angelo Russell or any other potential value plays?
Yeah, I mean, if Edwards doesn't play, there's a lot of usage available since obviously Karl-Anthony Towns is also out. Without Towns on the floor this year, Russell's at 1 fantasy point per minute. If you take Edwards off the floor, Russell still is actually only at 1 fantasy point per minute. But he has a 24% usage rate and a 33% assist percentage in the minutes without Towns or Edwards. So certainly a lot of opportunities for him. You would probably see increased playing time for Jalen Noel, who we know is a good point per minute guy and reasonably priced. I don't think he's really an option if all of these guys are in, but if Edwards were to be out, I think he would start to look better. Those are probably the 2 pieces that they would look to the most for offense. You probably would get Austin Rivers at 3,500 in the starting lineup if you want to roll the dice on Austin Rivers and just hope that you get the random game where he plays like an NBA player. Doesn't happen very often, but he's 3,500 and be playing a lot of minutes if he starts.
And now the final game on the slate, it is only going to be on FanDuel. It's not on DraftKings. I'm happy DraftKings excluded this game because it starts 2 hours after any of the other games, the Utah, Minnesota being the closest one. And there's so many injuries on both sides of the game that is kind of hard to know what to do with it. And then also, I assume we're not going to know what's going to happen with guys like Ja Morant until this game is closer to lock and the other games have already locked. But starting with the Phoenix Suns side of the game, we've got Landry Shamet is listed as questionable. Chris Paul is out. We know Cam Johnson is out. Cam Payne is out. Devin Booker is out. So if Landry Shamet isn't able to play, who would we be looking at on FanDuel from Phoenix?
Yeah, so I mean, if Shamet's out, you probably see Dwayne Washington Jr. remain in the starting lineup. You still can't really confidently project him for more than like 24, 25 minutes because they're frequently not going to him as a closer. They have no confidence in his ability to handle the basketball, protect the basketball, make decisions down the stretch. So that has held him back, but he is a good point per minute guy. Like he's going to just go out there and chuck up shots. So there is certainly upside for him, especially, if Shamet's out and he's starting, but it's still just difficult to give him enough minutes for him to really look like a great option, especially at the rising price tag. Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton, both make sense. Ayton 7,700 sees a little bit of a bump in usage without Devin Booker. Mikal Bridges should just play a million minutes. His usage rate on average doesn't really increase that much without Booker, but it still opens the door for those occasional games where Bridges does just go out there and take 20 shots. So I think him and Ayton would be the most important pieces from Phoenix.
And then is there anything else you want to mention from this team? Once again, Landry Shamet being questionable, that's going to have a big impact on this team and in particular the minutes, but would he look appealing if he plays?
I think he would look okay. He's 5K flat on FanDuel, which is nice. And he does take on a bigger role, like a different role without Paul and Booker. I think that's important to keep in mind because there's a tendency to just think of Landry Shamet as this low point per minute guy, but that's not because he can't be a good point per minute guy. It's just because he doesn't, that's not his role on this team. When you take out Booker, when you take out Paul, Shamet's actually around the fantasy point per minute. And assuming he starts and isn't on a minutes limit, you're likely getting 30 plus minutes from him. So he is the third guy here projected for ownership on FanDuel in addition to Bridges and Ayton. And I do think he'd be a good play if he's in 5,600. Sorry, I think I said 5K, but 5,600 still, a favorable price tag.
And then what really makes the Memphis Grizzlies annoying for the FanDuel slate is that Ja Morant is questionable. And obviously, this impacts not just the Grizzlies, but the entire slate as a whole, whether he's in or out. And we know what happens at this point if Morant doesn't play. Tyus Jones moves into the starting lineup, and he becomes a guy who, is capable of destroying a slate. And at $5,900, I would love him on FanDuel if Morant doesn't play. The problem is that if Morant plays, I would want nothing to do with Tyus Jones. So it's a really tricky situation. I feel like you kind of have to guess correctly, but do you have any real lean on Ja Morant? And if you were playing on FanDuel, how would you handle the Grizzlies injury report?
If he's questionable, I would just assume Morant is in. Like, that's just how I always handle it. But again, you're going to want to be around the late swap. And this is a really, really tough spot because you're getting this game after everything else. And if Morant is out, Tyus Jones just becomes one of the best plays on the slate. Desmond Bane looks a lot better. Everybody looks better if Morant is out. But again, Jones in particular at 5,900 would look very good, even at the elevated price tag. Bane at 7,200 looks good with or without Morant, but he would certainly look better if Morant is out. The problem is just that you're not going to have all of those roster spots available like you probably are for the Utah, Minnesota news because of this being the last game on the slate. And if Morant's in, outside of Bane, nothing really looks that good. So you're just not likely to have that much flexibility here.
And then also, if Morant doesn't play, like what does that do to guys like Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr.? Because those are also guys we would want to get to. Is there any part of you that would want to build some lineups and maybe try to get a little bit more exposure to players like Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. than they normally would, just in the chance that Morant is out? Because those are guys that would be difficult to late swap to.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a decent approach. Bane, I think you get to one way or the other. Like, even if you project Morant in 7,200 for 30 to 32 minutes of Bane is going to look good. He's pulling 14% ownership. So I think you're just naturally going to be getting to him. The issue with Jaren Jackson Jr. is that he's $8,100. So he's expensive. And, the FanDuel scoring is more favorable for Jackson because of his ridiculous block rate. But that's just like a really difficult price to get to. If Morant's out, it looks better. But I still wouldn't say that he's like a true priority, even if Morant sits at that price.
And by the way, we just got news. Miles Turner will play. Goga Bitadze also available. Clearly less significant, but good to know that Turner is in. Do you have any other takeaways from the Memphis Grizzlies?
Nope.
All right, that is going to do it for us today, but don't go anywhere because Live Before Lock is on right after us. But do like the video, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Good luck, everybody.
It is MLK Day. Pete McCarthy here for Stokastic DFS. So a good day, obviously, to reflect. Also, big night and day for the NBA. The Knicks get their big matinees. We'll be breaking that down, some of the best picks as far as no house advantage is concerned as we try to hit that $5,000 first prize. Maybe even do it twice today. Give us a like, subscribe, keep up with all of our shows, our DFS offers, our giveaways. Once you do subscribe, hit that notification button. That's going to give you alerts when our shows go live. And keep in mind, we are also available in podcast form on your platform of choice. So 2 big NBA contests on No House Advantage today. One being the $10,000 slam dunk. This is kind of the usual contest. $10 entry, $5,000 to first place. The lock time, though, a lot earlier, right? 1 o'clock, because we have all these day games. And then there's also a showdown contest late tonight as the Rockets will be taking on the Lakers. That starts at 10:30. Also, $5,000 to first place. I think you have a chance for a lot of overlay today. We'll see how it all works out. Sometimes I think that it doesn't quite go that way. But with the odd start times, as early as 1 o'clock, as late as 10:30, you might see a lot because both of these contests, it's 1,200 entries, and we typically see overlay at No House Advantage. We'll see how it plays out on a holiday with 2 different contests at 2 different kind of odd start times. So what are we looking at overall? In the early contest, which is what we'll break down here, you got 8 games throughout the day, starting with the Celtics and Hornets, and the Knicks with their customary matinee game on MLK Day as they'll be taking on the Raptors. So let's start with the Knicks, and we'll look at Jalen Brunson. Really low line in the pick'em contest, and we know we get some odd numbers in this contest, but 20.5 points for Jalen Brunson. We have a projected for about 24. He has scored at least 24 points in each of his last 7 games. That's basically since it came back from a minor injury. If you look at the sports books, this line's all the way up at 25.5 points. So, you know, it's kind of interesting. Based on the sports books, our projections at Stokastic, which are free for No House Advantage, we have a towards the under, but the pick'em contest, the number is just so far off that it becomes an over for us with No House Advantage. So definitely look at the over on this for Jalen Brunson to get to 21 points today against the Toronto Raptors. He's been doing it consistently. The books have it this way. Pretty easy one to get over on over at No House Advantage. I mentioned we have free projections for No House Advantage. Check them out, stokastic.com, NBA, free tools and data. Go to No House Advantage. It'll give you free projections for both the pick'em contest as well as if you want to play versus the house. Now, if you're new to No House Advantage, those are the 2 ways to play. The pick'em contest, you go in, you got to beat a lot of other people. If you do, you're going to get a big prize at the end of the day. Again, $5,000 to first place, both today and tonight. We make it super simple for you. We've got all the projections at stokastic.com. You could look at, you know, what is the best odds of being over, under. We give you the percentage chance based on our projections. Make it easy for you. Make it even easier for you. You can even just...
You. Jordan, I can't believe you would say that on a day like today.
Unbelievable.
And we are live. Welcome to NBA Live Before Lock. It is Monday, January 16th. I am Josh Engleman. I am joined by Eric Lindquist. We are brought to you by No House Advantage. And for at least one site, we've got a very normal and concise 5-gamer. FanDuel locking in a half hour is 7 games. That is a bit of a chore, but something we'll be paying attention to as we get closer to the bottom of the hour. But before we do anything, for the 1,300 people that are here, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Eric, how are you?
As good as I can do after my Vikings were just a disaster yesterday. I can't say I'm surprised. It's being a Minnesota sports fan, probably like being a Liverpool fan sometimes. Although you guys have had some pretty good years here of late.
Yeah, we've won things ever.
Yeah, I've never even been to the dance, let alone know how to dance. So it's just another depressing end to a football season. Happy to turn the page to NBA today.
I guess it's been a while since the Twins won the World Series.
Yeah, I was at both of them. 1987, 1 month old. My mom took me. And then in 91, I was 4. My dad took me. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Fun. That's kind of crazy. Also,
pretty well.
What a terrible idea to take you to that first one.
I was going to say, you want to know why I'm so loud? There you go.
Like, I'm never.
I don't think you thought about those things in 1987 as much.
I just wouldn't want to. Like,
No.
I wouldn't want the
choice. I was a month.
I wouldn't want the responsibility.
Yeah. I was like a month old.
Wait, just
leave him outside.
Yeah, wait in the car.
You're not going anywhere. Just latch him in.
It's not hot.
No, it wouldn't have been end of October.
You could leave
November.
Leave the heat on. Crack the window.
Yep. You'd make a great dad.
There's a reason I've got dogs, and that's it.
It's always good.
So I wish FanDuel would have made this be like a good thing, but they didn't. They ruined it with an early game. They ruined it with the late game. DraftKings nailed this one. I guess let's just start it off. Let's talk through some of the guards. And the easiest thing for me to do is to say, I really want to go to someone from Minnesota for today. Give me some Anthony Edwards in bunches.
Yeah, he's ridiculous. And we're just waiting on all this Minnesota Jazz news. And it'll be kind of the pivotal part of this slate. But again, it's done. It's all done for you at 4 p.m. Eastern time, 1 p.m. Pacific. We have this 1 hour session and you're just kind of waiting around. I hope that news comes out as late as possible because I'm just kind of building it in with a lot of those guys in right now. And I don't think it'll be too hard as long as I still have Miami and Atlanta to kind of piggyback off of, which is kind of smack dab in the middle there. I think I'll be able to pawn off enough salary. There's enough guys between Bam, between Jimmy Butler, between pretty much everybody from Atlanta. I think I should be able to get to everybody and use up my salary there pretty easily. What I don't want is to try to have to play some of these Minnesota punts in bulk. Like that would be really, really disgusting. Whether it's Jalen Noel, Austin Rivers, everybody else. So I'm just hoping everybody plays and we don't have to think about it.
What do you think? He's not a guard, but what do you think of Minnesota punt Torian Prince today? Flat 3K on DraftKings.
I don't want to do it if he's going to be popular. It seems like that's kind of what we're summarizing. He's 25% at the moment. And I get it's a weak position, but I'm getting into that mid-range. You and I were talking a little bit before this show. You're kind of getting to your DeAndre Hunter. I'm going to Najee Marshall. I know he's going to be chalkier, but like, give me somebody who has the ability to get to 30. Give me somebody who has that kind of in stock. I just feel like if I'm holding hands with a quarter of the field on a 3K guy who legitimately has a floor of like 10, I'm not going to be too happy on today's slate. So I'm trying to find ways away from that. Not sure what you're planning to do with them.
For Najee Marshall?
Torian Prince.
Oh, for Torian Prince, I'm getting to a bunch at this point. It's tricky because I don't really know how to avoid it. I even tried to knock his minutes down slightly and under project him to the industry and was still getting there. And at that point, once I started doing that, I was just like, okay, then I probably need to project him the way that I should, because even if I try to be pessimistic, I can't get away from it. The positionality and the fact that he is just that flat 3K is just so appealing right now for roster construction, which is weird because it's not as if it's unlocking me paying up to ultra expensive things. It's just sort of like creating an even more balanced build. But as of right now, Anthony Edwards is my most exposed guard. It is not particularly close.
Yep.
And then it gets kind of ugly after that. But some of the ugly isn't bad. D'Angelo Russell, Darius Garland, Donovan Mitchell, Jalen Brunson, all guys that I'm coming in over the field on. That part's good. Unfortunately, now I'm getting to a little bit of Corey Kispert, and I feel less happy.
Oh. That can't feel good. It's like indigestion. It's not a good feeling, and you don't want it.
No.
I have Monty Morris. So, I mean, that doesn't feel a whole lot better either at 4,800, but at least I don't know. Corey Kispert, that one was not on my radar.
3,500 right now. Look, it's just there's a couple guys like that. Dyson Daniels now, assuming he's going to be starting for the Pelicans, is like that 3K-ish guy that exists. I was getting to a small amount of DeLon Wright at one point in time. It seems like my lineup is craving, like all of my lineups are craving one of these low 3K guys, and it's just sort of rotating through everything.
Yeah, mine's not a 3K guy. Mine's going to be a 4K guy, but now he's pulling a lot more ownership. I just refreshed, and Jose Alvarado, 4K, Herb Jones. We're starting to see some minutes influx there at times. I mean, he played 30 last time out against Detroit, competitive spot. Herb Jones, 27 in that start, 24. I mean, he's just a decent enough fantasy point per minute guy, 0.93 on the season on DK, that I find it a little bit more palatable landing on him. In a spot where, stocks, a lot of opportunity going up against Cleveland, even in a lower total game, that 4K, that goes a long way for me today. Now, that could very, very shortly change. And if that ownership keeps creeping up to like 40% or something ridiculous like that, I'll probably have to hit eject. But for me, where I'm trimming all of the Taurean Prince, pretty easy for me to get another chalkier piece in like Jose Alvarado.
I didn't see the Drew Holiday ownership on FanDuel too right now. Oh boy. I mean, not that I'm surprised. That's what happens when Giannis isn't playing. Things just start to look a little bit different, but I didn't realize that at first because for the first time in ages, I wasn't paying attention to FanDuel ownership.
58.3. Okay, that seems like a lot.
It makes sense. From an ownership perspective on DraftKings, Edwards is at the top. Jose Alvarado is now at 30% ownership. Malik Beasley, Gary Trent, and D'Angelo Russell are all right at that 20% mark. Do you see anybody that's not getting any real ownership that you have any interest in?
Anybody at guard that's pulling any ownership? Yeah, Gary Trent isn't really... Well, no, he's up to 20% now too. There were guys that were lower in the last run that I'm kind of going back through. And it just seems like there were some pieces that were going a little bit lower. This one is coming in quite low. Trae Young as well. I said, I think I want to get away from playing some of the punts that you're looking at. I'm with you with Anthony Edwards, but I'm just trying to get to a little bit more of Miami, Atlanta in the event that I want to pivot more of that to Utah, Minnesota, and we're still waiting on the Minnesota piece. Is just confirmation there. But Jalen Brunson, I'm so on board with you there. He's sub 20%, I feel like, on a 5-gamer. 8,500. I know it's a back-to-back here for the Knicks, but my God, giga minutes, crazy amount of minutes, crazy amounts of opportunity. He's been so bad defensively and so damn good offensively. 8,500 still just too low, I think. I feel like I've been projecting him close to 44, 43 fantasy points for the last few outings, and we're still a little bit lower than that here at Stokastic, and it looks, 1.15 DraftKings points per minute now on the season. The guy's just been flat out good and an offensive piece that they needed from the Knicks, so him, Julius Randle, both pieces that I'm getting to. I think I probably have some interest in some cheaper Toronto pieces, the way that the field's not as well. Malachi Flynn was showing up in my lineups. I'm also getting to Precious Achiuwa at the center spot. But Malachi Flynn at a flat 3K. I understand Fred VanVleet's now in. Probably don't need to be doing that anymore. But in the name of value, we're starting to see those minutes trend up. He played 19 even with Fred VanVleet. So I think maybe there's an opportunity to get to a little bit of there still. I was kind of preloading him in the event that Fred VanVleet got ruled out. We got him ruled in right before the show started.
Any thoughts on the Malik Beasley ownership? He's the only one that I look at where I'm just like, I'm surprised he's at 20% right now.
I don't have any. I didn't even remotely think about Malik Beasley. I mean, he's over 5K. He doesn't really have a minutes upside. He could have an opportunity upside. I mean, it just depends on again, all the news that we're sitting there waiting on. We don't have confirmation on Lauri Markkanen yet, as far as I see. So yeah. I'm pretty sure you could see an influx of usage and opportunity, but I don't know what those minutes really look like. Does he have revenge in his heart against his former team? We'll find out. But I mean, 28-32, we're starting to see some of those starts, but like, he's a 0.89 fantasy point per minute guy, and he's 5K. And I think there's a number of other places I would rather go. I'd rather get up a little bit more to the Najee Marshall. I think you would rather get up a little bit and get to DeAndre Hunter. It's just kind of a weird one for me. Same way I feel about Mike Conley. I'm done jamming Mike Conley. I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, I'm basically half the field on Beasley, half the field on Conley. So you and I are on the same page there. I don't find the Utah guys to be as interesting as I find the Minnesota side.
Correct. Yeah, and it's all Minnesota, and there's a lot of iterations that this game ends up showing up. But I'm with you. Anthony Edwards, my highest owned player right now. 8,300 is insane. Like that's just borderline asinine for a guy who's going to routinely have over 30% usage every single time out and produces at a 1.15. I mean, he's basically Jalen Brunson with better eligibility with shooting guard, small forward. So it's kind of a no-brainer to me. I'm just playing a lot of both of them, but Anthony Edwards, it's just like an impossible piece to get away from.
All righty. Jordan had to go to the bathroom, so I'm going to
cool.
Announce that on the stream for everybody. So I'm not going to do an ad read right now. It's that kind of day, Jordan. Sorry. Go ahead. They don't care, man. It's not like anybody's listening for you to go to the bathroom. Go ahead. You're good. You're good. Go potty, buddy. You'll be all right. You'll be all right. I
have one other guy that I wanted to... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, should we be talking about like Steph today? We're talking so much about these, like a bunch of 3K options that exist. Should we be talking more about him? Or you mentioned it before. Should we be talking more about Trae Young? I don't think we should be talking more about CJ McCollum, but Trae and Steph are both pay-up options that really aren't seeing any ownership.
Yeah, 34 minutes against Chicago. I think for me, the concern is just a back-to-back. Do they really give him a crazy amount of minutes there at 10-4? I mean, can he go out and give you 2 DraftKings points per minute, knock down a bajillion threes without Clay out there? Sure, he absolutely can, but I got to assume he's nowhere near going over 34 minutes today. Like, if I knew he could get to like 36, 38 in a competitive spot, that'd be one thing, but we haven't projected under 32 minutes at Stokastic, and I think that's correct.
So I don't have him projecting all that well. I'm getting to basically the field. I have 8%. So I don't really have too much else to add on Curry. It's just a tough price tag for me. And he sees his rates just bounce in a really weird way when Clay is off, and it like replaces with Poole, where assist rate comes down. His 2-point shooting is significantly worse. I think he's just probably trying to create a little bit more for himself in those situations. So I didn't find myself getting there, but I certainly have the ability to from a salary perspective. So I was just curious if you were getting there, because it made sense to me to get there. It's just not happening. I know Adam got there 2 nights ago.
Well, that must have been fun. Was that the San Antonio one? No, I don't think it was fun for him. I was being a little facetious there, but
yeah, I don't blame you.
It's whatever. Like, my thing with Steph, the reason I almost never get to Steph on these kind of slates where he's the only spend up you really have at guard is I look at Siakam and I look at Randall at the other positions, and it's more of a positional deal. And then the guards that are at like 9,200, like I have Donovan Mitchell within 2 fantasy points of Steph Curry today. And that just makes it impossible for me to try to prioritize him when he's there's like a 5% difference, and there's 1,200 in salary. And I get it from a raw points perspective. Maybe you see some of that coming up here. It's Steph Curry. If he goes out, I mean, he's got a 93rd percentile true shooting percentage this season. As he said, mid-range has been up. He's like right around 49% on the season for that. He can just create for himself and do all the things that he needs to alongside Poole. As you said, it's just kind of an interesting balance with him and Clay. And then you get absent Clay. It just makes sense to fire him up, like just logically in the back of your head. But like at 10-4, when I have Mitchell and I have Brunson so well projected, it's just impossible for me to want to try to prioritize them at nearly equal ownership for those guys.
We're on the exact same page with the exact same guys. Okay. SMP getting to Corey Kispert, an uncomfortable amount of Corey Kispert as his 3K punt. It's not making me feel good. I'm hoping that when I rerun this crunch right now, life changes a little bit, because he's Corey Kispert. Like, that's just not, it's never going to be a fun one. Getting it right would be exceptional. Like if Corey Kispert went out and had 35 DK points or something today, I would be so happy. But that is like, it's such a small likelihood of outcome that it's just sickening. He's just not the right guy.
But you're not that guy, pal. You're not that guy. What else would you be? Because again, you said you're jamming Taurean Prince. I'm playing a lot of Jose Alvarado 4K.
I just gave Jose Alvarado another minute, so it might change for me.
Okay. Because Delon Wright was the other guy. Like, if I were to have to play a punt on the Washington side, I'm playing Monty Morris at semi-puntish. But Delon Wright is 3,400. I would much rather play him. I'm not playing him very much. I have like 8%. But if I were to look at the Washington side and get to something that was cheap, I don't think I would be going Kispert. And I know the shooting guard eligibility might play into that a little bit, but like, I would much rather play Delon Wright.
Anything else that we should be touching on for guards? And by the way, FanDuel people, you have 9 minutes to go.
Jeez. Yeah, have fun with that. What a lovely site. Let's see.
So silly.
Utah. So I said I'm not playing Mike Conley. Jordan Clarkson is at least appealing. I would want to have as many shares of Jordan Clarkson as I could if you don't have Lauri Markkanen out there. So I will throw that out there. Everything we're talking about, if Lauri Markkanen's out, just kind of goes out the window. You can get to as many pieces of that entire game as possible. I would just want to play everything on the Minnesota side and kind of disregard. I'm sure I would probably get to more 3K Taurean Prince and just kind of have as much of that game as possible. Jaden McDaniels, was going to be somebody that I get to regardless in that mid-range, different positionality. But at guard right now, Anthony Edwards, really the only piece on the Minnesota side I want to get to. But Jordan Clarkson could potentially be one of my highest owned players too.
All righty. All right, folks, 1,500 people in here. Hit that like button. We got about 200 now. No reason we can't make that number go up a little bit. We've still got the No House Advantage NFL show coming up after this at 3:30. So we're going to be on for a little over an hour at this point. We've got the NHL Live Before Lock coming up at 5 p.m. and then NFL Live Before Lock for the Cowboys game tonight, 7:15 to 8:15. I think you're getting Laffy and Neil. That should be a good one. So, guys, just make sure you're watching everything. And don't forget, 5 days free of our NBA package if you've never signed up with us before. Link is in the description of this show. That's projections, ownership, boom, bust, our player compare tool. So you can check out all the 1v1s and 2v2s and our brand new lineup generator, which I think you guys will want to check out. Doing a lot of heavy lifting on the back end for you on that one. We're just going to be providing you nothing but quality lineups. So please, guys, go check it out. You ready for forwards?
Yep.
All right, let's talk some forwards. I'm going to change the filters on my table here so I can also talk some forwards. Who is your favorite forward for today?
Jaden McDaniels.
Ooh, okay. Talk to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is just, there's a lot of ways that we could see this Minnesota team look. And again, I can't predict the future right now, but 4,600, I'm just kind of jamming him. He's got small forward, power forward eligibility, 4,600, and he's projecting out already pretty well for me. And you're going to be waiting on the Gobert side of it. You're waiting on the Anthony Edwards side of it. Taurean Prince side of it too. Somebody that, obviously, if he ends up being out, that's a whole nother can of worms. But I feel like I want to have the extra salary. The reason I'm not playing Taurean Prince is I just think Jaden McDaniels is a markedly better player. And we're starting to see him get those opportunities at 36 minutes. He's a low usage guy, so it's never all that appealing. The rebound rate is whatever. But we're starting to just see him be able to, across the board, add something to it. And it's really just a small forward who's 4,600, cheaper than some of those 5K guys. 5K guys can't say words.
5K
that was
what?
Interesting. Whatever. Jordan Klein.
Clip that. Somebody will get it for us. Appreciate you guys. You got that, Jordan? Thanks. Good stuff. You good?
No.
Yeah, chat's got you. Are you playing the one from Utah? I don't think he's 5K though. He's probably like a 3,500 gay. This is perfect. Oh, Scott Reed, well done there too. That's a good gimmick. Oh man, I'm really excited for that clip to make the rounds. By the way, my highest exposed forward is also Anthony Edwards. So thank you, Anthony Edwards, for being on both positions. So that's what we talk about here. How you holding up?
I'm okay. Okay. I've tried to say the words and the words just didn't come out correctly. So it's fine. 5K guys.
Or they did come out correctly. Either way.
I feel like Chad always takes it to another level too. It's on Twitter in 2 minutes. Oh, great. Thank you, Jordan Klein. Glad you're here for me.
It's fantastic. On Twitter in 2 minutes. Fantastic. Okay. Of the chalk forwards, and we only really have one. It's Anthony Edwards. Like, otherwise, it's really hard to draw a line. Taurean Prince is 25% owned, but there are 8 guys within 7 percentage points of ownership to him, going all the way down to like 18% on Kuzma. So just like, who else stands out? I know we already talked about Malik Beasley. You mentioned Najee Marshall before. We've sort of touched on Taurean Prince already. You've talked about Jaden McDaniels now. Who are some of the guys that aren't really pulling the ownership that you're getting to? I have 2 that I'm 2Xing or more right now. That would be Kyle Anderson.
Yep, that was the first one I had.
Barrett.
And RJ Barrett, you said? Yeah. Julius Randle for me would be the other one. I just like getting to him and Jalen Brunson. They're doing everything for this basketball team. It's pretty incredible to watch. The back-to-back, I don't know how to project for it, so I'm not going to be sitting there. Like, for me, it's weird to take a couple minutes off Steph, but it's more of like injury related. And I don't think that Tom Thibodeau has no regard for human life is kind of what it comes down to. So like, RJ Barrett has had a pretty abysmal, no good, very bad season. I'm overweight to him too at 6,900. He's at 10%. It's kind of all 3 of those main core Knick guys I seem to be getting a little bit over the field on. But yeah, Julius Randle ends up being my guy, a little bit lower down there too. Kind of surprised to see him not pulling nearly as much, especially if you lose Lauri Markkanen, and it's like, well, I'm just going to pay up for Julius Randle a lot at the forward spot.
I'm basically neutral on Randle right now. The Barrett thing for me is just that I think his minutes are all over the place, and he could play upwards of 40 today, and it wouldn't be weird at all for a 5-game slate. And if I think that I can get 40 minutes of RJ Barrett at a situation where I don't think he's pulling the ownership, today is where I'm sort of interested. I gave him 36 minutes. He played 26 on Sunday and didn't close, but they closed with quickly. I don't feel like a matchup against Toronto is a game where you close small. Maybe that changes if Fred VanVleet happens to be out for some strange reason. Well, not for some strange reason, but if they close with anything weird and not with length. So I expect him to be out there, and I think that he can get a couple extra minutes as well. I think there's still some meat left on the bone at 36 minutes. So I'm hoping that the price tag is good enough for me, and that's the way I'm kind of just paying up to be contrarian for it. I don't know how I feel about it, though.
I don't know how I feel about anything today.
That's fair.
Yeah,
I can understand that. FanDuel people, you have just under 2 minutes to go before you lock with their first game. If you don't have your lineups in now, try to make an adjustment and get all Indiana and Milwaukee pieces out, or at the very least, lock Drew Holiday. You don't want to. There's not too many other options at this point.
Yeah, that would be the priority.
This stupid staggered start is so irritating.
Yeah. It's whatever. The DraftKings slate was just exponentially better. It's just don't have to think about anything outside of an hour. And I'm generally the person who it's like, oh, give me as much late swappability as possible. When the first game out of the gate has a lock button piece, and then later on you're waiting on a bunch of news, and it just doesn't seem like a whole lot of fun to me.
No, that the best part of today is that at 3:00, we will have 1 hour, and then we could just sort of walk away from everything. We don't have to sit around and wait and beg and hope to figure out what's going on. We just know, and we can go about our lives. That's why I miss FanDuel no late swap. That was the best thing in the world to me, that I could just live my life. It's long gone now. It'll never come back. They keep making it worse.
They're horrendous. At some point, they'll figure it out, right? It's only been however many years.
Who knows? I feel like I don't have too much else to say. What
are you doing with Evan Mobley?
I have 27% at this moment.
So you have quite a bit of Evan Mobley. I don't have as much Evan Mobley, and he's 6,300. That's kind of a weird piece to me. Scotty Barnes is a weird piece to me at 7,300, because I feel like that's a box score watching situation where we're going to get to lock and he's going to be like 25% owned at 7,300 and I want nothing to do with it. So both of those pieces just feel a little bit like inherent. They're going to be higher owned than what I think we maybe have projected. I just can't get there.
Okay, I'm at 25% Corey Kispert now. I can handle that.
You can live with that.
I can live with that. I'm going to pace my lineups in right now. I hope that I don't have to make another change. I am very comfortable with my exposures, which means undoubtedly we're about to get some news that I don't want.
Anthony Edwards ruled out.
Really?
No, I was just kidding.
Oh.
I'm saying that's what would be the news that I have like 95% of him right now. So that would.
I have walked into that news so much in my life that I just assumed you were serious.
No. For once, it was
everybody watching the show. Yeah, they're gonna ban you for 5 minutes.
I deserve it. My 5K guys are doing great though. Yeah. Oh my gosh.
I have 75% Edwards right now. My second most exposed player on today's slate. We have not talked about my most exposed player yet.
Are we going to? I mean, we haven't talked about him. It's going to be center, and it's got to be Jared Allen, right?
It is center, and it is Jared Allen.
Okay, good talk. That's why I'm not getting to as much Mobley too. By the way,
he's just not priced correctly. That's there's nothing else to really say. 5,900 for Jared Allen is just incorrect.
I agree.
I'm also getting to a lot of another center, and he is my fourth most exposed player. And I think you're going to get this one wrong.
Your second most exposed center, and I'm going to get it wrong. Walker Kessler.
No, but you did get it wrong.
Well, thank you. I have Precious Achiuwa, and I know he's not grading out that well here. For me, it's just a 3,300 guy that feels better than some of the other punts we've been talking about on a 5-game slate. Is it Mitchell Robinson?
It is Mitchell Robinson.
Okay.
5,300, by all accounts, playing 32 minutes or more today, 18% owned. That's just I've got Jared Allen and Mitchell Robinson in a lot of stuff. I've got 69% Jared Allen, 47 on Mitch.
That'll do it.
The second best Mitch in the DFS industry. I am not though. I guess we're just gonna bring in centers now. We're gonna start letting it. We're gonna go wild.
Yeah.
How are you handling Bam Adebayo? Because he is someone that I am not getting to.
I'm about at the field. I don't really have that strong of a take. I like the over on his 20.5 points prop that exists pretty much everywhere here today. I'm not sure what to make of Jimmy Butler just not trying at basketball right now. Kind of a weird way of breaking that one down for me. But yeah, it's been pretty strange watching Miami Heat games. And I feel like I've watched a number of them here of late. We're starting to see that usage come down a little bit for Jimmy Butler here. And Bam Adebayo, it's like a positional thing where generally center is really, really stacked. And outside of Jared Allen, there's not a lot that I'm prioritizing today. I think it's a pretty flat position where you can take some shots on some different guys. There's always a case to be made for J-Val. And I think having a large front court helps, for his minute certainty. I doubt that they're going to be able to go to more Larry Nance without Jonas Valanciunas with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley there in the mix. So I think at 6,800, he's somebody that I like getting to, and that's significantly cheaper than a Bam. But yeah, it's for me, he's just a dude that stands out. I mean, we've got him projected right around 43 here at Stokastic today. I'm right about that. It feels like a guy I'm just going to be holding hands with the field. I have enough other stands on today's slate that I don't really need to worry about it too much.
Okay.
I mean, are you just like not playing him?
He's in 3% of my lineups.
That is not playing him. Yeah, I'm at 22. So there you go.
And I'm in that range too. Like I'm neutral on Gobert. I'm neutral on Porzingis. Bam is just falling by the wayside. I have less of the Heat than basically any other team. The Heat and the Warriors, I think, are my two least exposed teams. Yeah. The most I have of anybody on the Heat is 5% of Tyler Hero. The most I have of anybody on the Warriors is 4% of Jordan Poole. Like I am just not getting to those teams.
Okay. Yeah,
which scares the hell out of me.
I have none of, and somebody asked me a 2v2 in chat there a second ago, and I I didn't like the Jordan Poole side, but I liked the Alvarado side very, very much.
Okay. Let's see. How much Alvarado did I end up with now that I made that adjustment and gave him a minute? Okay. Neutral to the field. That works for me.
It's fine.
Yeah.
I
got a little bit more Najee now too.
Okay. Good man.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm very happy with my exposures. I know that I'm going to hate that, or it's like something's going to happen to ruin what I have right now, but I'm very happy with what I have.
Yeah. I just uploaded my lineups too, and I actually feel pretty good about it. So yeah, it's inevitable. It's coming. No Lauri Markkanen, no Anthony Edwards, no Taurean Prince. We're going to just have a party.
Yeah, I just don't want that to happen. I
By the way,
particularly
when we said most expensive, or when we said most rostered forwards, I just assumed Anthony Edwards was off the board when we were talking about it. I mean, I have 90% of him. So there you go. Jaden McDaniels, 40%, right around there.
Let's see. Anything else that we should be touching on? Like, I feel like this is a really easy slate to talk about.
Yeah. Anthony Lamb, any interest there? He's showing up for me. None, really.
He's in one lineup.
I have 34% of him. So that would be very, very different. No Klay Thompson. I just feel like at 4,100, we should keep taking shots on this guy. We're starting to see him offensively. And it's weird to take shots on hot hand approach guys sometimes in certain slates, because it's like, oh, well, he's not going to project as well as X or not project out as well as Y. We have projected pretty well here today. He is routinely right around 0.82 fantasy point per minute guy. That doesn't stand out so much, but there's an opportunity absent everybody here where, you could see Anthony Lamb play himself into some more minutes. And I understand Wiggins back might be a major problem here as well going forward, but he's been better than I expected for the Warriors this year. And I think at 4,100, not pulling, double digit ownership like a lot of the guys we've talked about, he's cheaper than, a McDaniels, way cheaper than a Najee Marshall, DeAndre Hunter. And I think he could play himself offensively into some more opportunities. So like, he's shooting it a little bit over his head of late for sure. I mean, that one game, 14 3-point attempts, I don't look at that, but like, 3 for 4, 2 for 3 from 3, but like, he's just been a serviceable piece for them. I think at 4,100, I'm all right getting there way over the field.
I have him in for 24 minutes. I didn't get to much, but like I said, I didn't get to basically anything from Golden State. I have 10% of my 800% of exposure going. When I say 10%, like aggregate 10, 4 to Poole, 2 to Curry, 3 to Wiggins, 1 to Lamb. Like I'm not getting to Golden State as a whole. I would have had to give Lamb multiple extra minutes to get into that range.
I have him at 28.5. So that's, when you said 24, I'm trying to see if maybe I'm way off about this. I don't
think it's crazy if he plays those minutes. They just have so many options at this point in time. Like he played 33 the last time Klay was out, but Steph was also out, and that was Wiggins' first game back.
Yeah. And he's played himself up. That's what I'm the most concerned about is kind of the Wiggins piece. DiVincenzo, I think we kind of have seen that he's going to be a mid-20s minute guy, I think, in this rotation. Maybe he ends up being the guy who spikes a couple more minutes. How many minutes do you have DiVincenzo in for?
I gave DiVincenzo 26.
Okay. So you're just lower. You kind of spread it around a little bit more to everybody. And then, if Jordan Poole, 34, 33 minutes.
I got 34 for Poole and Steph.
Okay. See, that's where I've got Steph Curry trimmed. I think that's the difference between what we're doing is Steph Curry. I don't think plays 34 minutes in a competitive spot here. Like, I don't think they want him playing back-to-back days, 34 minutes. Maybe I'm just way off base with that. And it's like, well, just rest him if you were actually concerned about what that would turn into. But I seem to be taking him away from Steph a little bit more than you are. And then kind of putting those towards Anthony Lamb, towards DiVincenzo. Or actually,
look, there are minutes out there.
Yeah.
I don't think it's crazy. Someone's gonna play a chunk of minutes more than we would expect from this team, just because of the way that things get freed up. Whether that's DiVincenzo, Lamb, Moody, Ty Jerome, somebody is going to do that. I don't have a great feel of which guy that's going to be.
I hope it's the 4,100 guy who's pulling less than 10% ownership.
I'll bet you do. All right, so we're at 2:39. We got about 20 minutes to go here before we get to DraftKings lock. I think now would be the perfect opportunity to talk a little bit about No House Advantage. They are the sponsor of this show. Before I do that, I'm going to take a sip of water. Just needed to happen. Throat felt weird. Don't want to do a read with the weird feeling throat. So here's what we've got going on for today at No House Advantage. I'm probably going to lean you guys more towards some football for right now, even though this is an NBA show, because No House Advantage has the NFL 20K Monday Wildcard Showdown, 10K to first. There are 1,600 entries in this contest, 10K up top, 39% filled as of this moment, which means you can put in $100 using the link in the description of this video, and then they will match that deposit with another $100. So you're going to be able to put 13 entries in there if you want. We have No House Advantage projections on Stokastic.com. They cost you $0 to access. And if you want to do even less work, we have No House Advantage optimal lineups already generated for you. Can't ask for anything better. If you do want to get into the lone NBA contest that is left right now, that's going to be a showdown contest for the late game tonight. So at 10:30 tonight, Houston and the Lakers. That's going to be 5K to first, 10K guaranteed prize pool. Those are the spots that you're looking for. But for right now, 10K to first for Cowboys Bucks tonight, that would be where I would want to be. So go check it out, everybody. All righty. What else should we touch on? Is there anybody that you're getting a lot of that we have not addressed so far?
Rudy Gobert.
Okay.
Utah. It says
Cool.
Utah on the other side of it. He's playing Utah, guys. Not that we should be looking at narrative-based things all that often, but it's Rudy Gobert. I think he wants to play basketball against Utah. That's an impression that I probably get about him. But 7,400, this front court, having Kelly Olynyk out is probably a really, really bad thing for him to a certain extent. Like having a true center like Walker Kessler out there, probably not as ideal. But they've just been getting hemorrhaged Utah on the boards, and Rudy Gobert pretty good at the whole rebounding thing. I feel like there's a pretty pronounced upside there, and just because of the Q tag, it's hard to find guys that are super low owned. Like Rudy Gobert, we've got around 11.4%. Maybe that's true if we get to lock and he's still not announced in, but in the event that he ends up being somebody after lock that gets officially confirmed as playing, I want a lot of Rudy Gobert at 7,400.
I'm neutral right now. I wouldn't mind getting more, that's for sure. I think it's obviously a fantastic spot. I'm already getting to a bunch of his teammates, so any extra Minnesota that I get, it would be more than okay with me.
Yeah, it's just a game that I want a ton of. And I think, again, there's ways that this game has tons of value. There's also ways where the plays just kind of fit well together as is. Like we could just have Taurean Prince and Anthony Edwards and everybody, and everybody's underpriced for what this game is. As a result, like a lot of, I just find them to be it's the most appealing game on this slate by a landslide for me. And so just give me all of it in every capacity I can.
Trae Young available to play, Clint Capella available to play.
How many minutes?
Pelicans will start McCollum, Daniels, Marshall, Murphy, Valanciunas. So nothing that we weren't expecting.
I play too much Trey Murphy every slate, so I feel like I don't even bring him up anymore. Just assume that I have 15-20% of Trey Murphy every slate.
I have 7% right now, which is fine.
Yeah,
no
18.
Capella, obviously.
Yeah. How many minutes did you give him, though, just to know what to do with John Collins here?
I split Capella and Okongwu 24-24. I don't have a great feel either direction.
Still want to play John Collins. There's a part of me that still wants to do it.
I just want to know why he can't shoot. I don't really understand.
Brutal. I
was shocked when I saw that he was shooting 18% from three when all of the normal starters are out there.
It's just absurd.
That's worse than me.
Not great,
40% 3-point shooter for 3 years. Like he's
first
not a
percentile. First percentile dunks and threes, 23%. That is unreal. Doesn't add you anything in the assist column. Getting a better rebounder out there. This is probably not good. Yeah, I come on, John. Come on. You want them, you want the bag, don't you, bud?
I am very, very, very curious to see if he gets traded and where he ends up.
Where do you think he would fit well at?
Indiana is the first place that I think of all the time.
Interesting. Just an improved Jalen Smith. They already paid Jalen Smith.
Another stretch, play alongside of a stretch 5 if you want. Could play some of the backup 5 minutes if you want. I think he could hold up a little bit on second units. It's got to be a team with a pretty sizable amount of spacing. I don't think that there's a way around it otherwise. So, Denver has no need for him, so it doesn't matter. Memphis has no need for that type of player or salary slot, although I think he would be really fun alongside Jaren Jackson.
He'd be awesome in Golden State.
They can make up for the defense for sure.
He'd be awesome at Golden State.
He's sort of already in Dallas as Christian Wood.
Yeah, that's the way I feel about, he's like an improved Jalen Smith for sure, but he's such an interesting basketball player because he's on an expired.
We got Markkanen out.
Fudge. Well, so things have changed a little.
Yep. We need to scramble. Scramble.
That game was already appealing. Now it's there's no question. You can't possibly argue that it's not the most appealing game on the slate by a landslide.
I would agree. So we've got no Lauri Markkanen for Utah, that is real news. I assume we're going to get Vanderbilt.
Yes.
I don't know. I don't have a great feel here.
I assume you get Vanderbilt playing alongside. So starting Malik Beasley, lock. Jordan Clarkson, lock. Mike Conley, lock. Walker Kessler, lock.
Yeah, I assume we get what
THT
makes the most sense. They
THT
only really play him. They
New.
only really start him in guard situations, though. It's when Conley's gone or Sexton's gone.
Yeah, they need a 4 basically out there. It's got to be Jared Vanderbilt. And going back to the old team, they didn't want anything to do with him. I think you got to
give 2 more minutes to Kessler now, just by default, because they're not going to be playing alongside of each other as much.
Right. And if Gobert plays for sure, I'm going to give him more minutes.
I think, Malik Beasley now goes from a guy that I didn't have a ton of interest in to a guy that I think is playing a ton of minutes.
Yeah. The tough one for me for this entire team, because everybody's interesting, legitimately everybody's interesting. Colin Sexton, how do you go about projecting his minutes? Because he's a guy that I think is going to come in really, really low owned. Can he play more than 26 minutes?
Yeah, I won't move his minutes now.
Yeah. Then I can't do it still, but it's just frustrating because I want to.
I'm bumping everybody up now. We got Fontecchio on whatever that was, Saturday or Sunday. He played a first quarter and second quarter rotation and got 8 minutes.
Dude, what is going on with these minutes from what do we do? This THT Nickeil Alexander-Walker thing. They're going to want something else off the bench here, too. They can slide.
I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker plays 22 minutes, something like that.
Makes him interesting.
Does.
At least
it makes him more interesting than he was before, that's for sure.
I had 0 before. He was not even, what I have him for, 8 minutes? 7 minutes? 7 minutes.
I hope that I get this crunch done. This is going to be a tight squeeze. So if we're saying Kelly Olynyk off, Lauri Markkanen off, what do we know? So I got to adjust some usage rates. Malik Beasley with those 2 guys off this season, 341 minutes, 21% usage rate. So it doesn't really change anything for him. Colin Sexton hasn't played enough to really make a giant change. Where does this usage? It's got to be Clarkson, right? 212 minutes. Yeah, 33% usage rate for Jordan Clarkson in situations where those guys are all off the floor. We do see THT fall into big time usage in those scenarios. I don't necessarily think that matters for today, but I do think he's going to play now, but not enough to matter. Nickeil Alexander-Walker in 183 minutes, 17% usage rate. Something to keep in mind there.
0.87 DraftKings points per minute too for that. THT, I think I'm going to take some shots on that for sure. The Walker Kessler thing and Jordan Clarkson thing are just like, I'm jamming. Like I'm pretty sure I'm just going to end up jamming at this point.
Oh man, I'm very curious to see how this affects my Mitchell Robinson, Jared Allen stuff.
See, it shouldn't be crazy on DraftKings. I know that like you play on FanDuel primarily where you have the one center and you're worried about how it's going to shift. It shouldn't kill Jared Allen at all. It might kill some Mitchell Robinson. You might have to nuke him a little bit to get some more, but it's
I just
crazy
like Kessler so much now.
What?
I like Kessler so much.
I'm obsessed with him. He's my favorite. Him and Clarkson are just fantastic.
Agreed. I like Beasley a lot now at 5K. That because he's shooting guard small forward, I think that really changes up the game a little bit for him.
Yeah, I will say it's kind of wild. You take Kelly Olynyk, Lauri Markkanen off the floor. I expected him to just be way up there. He's only 0.9 DraftKings points per minute. So it's what was the sample size there? We're looking at 338 minutes, pretty sizable compared to everybody else. So I mean, there's at least that in terms of usage. You know, he's out there chucking 20.7%, nothing crazy. Fontecchio, I hate that guy. I hate him.
It's been a while since I've had like an aggressive scramble on a live before lock. Like I'm barely going to get lineups in.
You got 9 minutes. Come on now.
That's a long time, or not a long time. It's not long enough. That much I could tell you.
Glad Adam enjoyed my slip up. That was. I'm glad. So I live in California. I love my gay brothers and sisters. LGBTQ, my friends.
I think there's like so many more letters and symbols in it now.
Josh,
is that not true?
Yeah, there are. I think
there's a plus sign. I think
plus. Now? Yes. There you go.
There's probably some others. I'm not entirely sure. It's hard to keep track of. It is a tough thing to keep track of. I don't,
love is love though.
New one every year.
All right.
It's hard.
I got a lot of Walker Kessler and Jordan Clarkson.
I have not run my crunch yet, but we're getting there. All right. I clicked crunch, so I could let this run for probably 4 minutes and take whatever I get. Walker Kessler now projecting very highly for me. Malik Beasley projecting very highly for me. I think I'm going to end up with... I'm still getting Mitchell Robinson and Jared Allen quite a bit at the top, so I think I'm going to just have like a giant 3-man band of Kessler, Robinson, and Allen.
As you should. I mean, incoming Bam Adebayo 60 piece. Enjoy that. Pascal Siakam's going to be so low owned, dude. He's going to be so low owned. I have to.
I think that's the first time we said his name.
I know. I'm now going back and revisiting it. I'm already short on Gary Trent, Scotty Barnes, OG. Like I'm not anywhere close to these guys today. I feel as though with all the value, because I mean, that's what we have. We just have increased value on the Utah side where we could be sitting on a gold mine with Minnesota as well. Give me some of the studs as the games start off in this early window. I want to play Julius Randle. I want to play Pascal Siakam, and I'll let my lineups kind of fit together as be.
All right. So crunches are running. I'm up to almost 1,000 lineups generated. So I'm feeling pretty good right now. But I had to just go with whatever I typed in for Utah minutes and rates on my first guess is the path that I'm taking forward here.
Yeah,
but it's Utah, Minnesota game stack is very apparent in the lineups that I'm seeing.
Yeah. What I generally end up doing is I kind of like increase fantasy rates just even a little bit more if it's a prominent usage player. And then it kind of fits the way that it's supposed to. Like you want to get to more Clarkson, not less Clarkson. You want to get to more Walker Kessler. And part of it is just the timing of the news itself. Like people aren't going to jam it the way that they might have if this had broken at 11:30 my time, 2:30 your time. Like it would have been completely different.
I just exported my first 1,000 that crunched out just to get fresh lineups in, and now I've got the other 1,000 running. So I should be able to get to where I need to be. As I refresh, Edwards, Beasley, Kessler, Clarkson, Prince are my 5 most exposed guys right now.
How much Conley did you get to?
Barely any. He didn't really change for me. Like I didn't move his minutes or anything.
I have 8% of him, and he feels like the guy that I'm going to be shorting out of everybody. We have him now up to 17%. That is just wrong to me.
I have 6.
Ooh, you're less than me even. Jared Vanderbilt is by far the most uncomfortable piece of this whole thing. I'm going to get to a lot, and I'll maneuver it around based on the starting lineup.
I'm fully expecting Jared Vanderbilt to be what I want Walker Kessler to be. If that makes sense.
Totally. I get it.
Because I'm not really getting to
Walker
Vanderbilt.
Kessler.
I got to 4% Vanderbilt. Wow. And 60% Kessler. Ooh, speaking of Kessler, what ended up happening at center? All right, so I still have a ton of Allen. I have a lot less Mitchell Robinson, and now I'm getting to a lot more Walker Kessler.
I felt like it was going to be impossible for you to not still get Jared Allen.
I wish I was getting a little bit more Mitchell Robinson, but that might just have to be a very quick manual adjustment. I'm up to 1,400 lineups generated. I see the question here. What about THT? I don't think that he's going to play a real role here, but if I'm being honest, I don't have a great feel for what they're going to do on the bench. They just tend to use him in a very guard forward role. And when I guard priority role is what I mean. And that's not really what opened up today.
Totally makes sense.
But he did play 28 minutes off the bench. I just don't expect him to close alongside Nikhil, without Vanderbilt or without Beasley out there on the floor too. All right, so we're at 3 minutes to go before lock.
All right, sorted, done. The major thing for me that happened was I just went from having a ton of Jose Alvarado to south of 20% now. Significantly less.
2.5 minutes to go, right?
Yep.
I'm about to click refresh.
Let's see.
This is nerve-wracking, man.
Yeah, THT can be a problem. THT could be a very, very real problem today. You can't project, but there's just such a wide range of outcomes. Try to give me what a medium projection is, have it matter. If he's pulling no ownership, you obviously need to be taking some shots on it. We'll be seeing as we go. We've got an extra half hour, correct? Or we staying around? Yeah, so
we do.
We'll be hanging out. We'll be able to talk about things as they're updating, as we're getting lineups in. We'll take a look at everything that matters for you all. And we'll be able to find the right 5K guys for your lineups.
All right. Well, whatever I have in here right now is what's going in. So this should be a real treat.
THT is a big stats guy. I don't think so. Iowa State, though, once again, my guys, we ride together.
All right, I got my lineups in, I don't have any THT. I don't feel comfortable there. It's not like I got to Nickeil Alexander-Walker or something over him. It does make me at least a little bit nervous, but at the same time, I don't have a great feel for it.
I'm going to be very, very upset if Rudy Gobert does not play basketball today. I'm just going to throw it out there. If him and Anthony Edwards sit, I'm going to be so unbelievably pissed off because I feel like the biggest thing that can be said in the next minute, Julius Randle, Pascal Siakam, get to their ceilings in a handful of lineups just in case, because you could be looking at the best play on the entire slate would become Naz Reid at the power forward spot if Rudy doesn't play. You're going to want to have 100% of Naz Reid. Period. End of story. I currently don't have Naz Reid built into anything, and that would be really, really bad losing 3 games.
Man, I just do not have a good feel on anything here for the Utah bench.
Yeah, it's disturbing. They've had Abaji show up randomly at times. They've had Fontecchio show up at times. I was going through a couple of the logs for it where it's just like, I don't even know what I would want. Like, when I sit there and I project out the minutes, it's like, I know that it could be 15 minutes in either direction for THT and Nickeil Alexander-Walker. Like, you could legitimately go in such an unbelievable way. And Agbaji's the guy that we gave the most minutes to at Stokastic, which I find to be pretty interesting because he's definitely the least interesting from a fantasy perspective.
How many minutes did we give him?
We have him at 16 here. We have Nickeil Alexander-Walker at 8 and Taylor Horton-Tucker at 7.
Okay. Where'd the rest of the minutes go?
We've got, it's still Lauri Markkanen. I guess it still hasn't updated here entirely on this. Let me refresh it one more time. I have my spreadsheet where I put my minutes in, and I just wanted to cross-reference it here as we got to lock.
Because we are locked.
Yep. My God.
I have some massive exposures right now.
Yeah, Taylor Horton-Tucker, we have at 21 minutes now. That's good. That's okay. More in line with what it is. But I'm saying that could be 15, that could be 28 pretty easily. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, we have at 13.
Okay.
Agbaji, 18 still. It's weird. Just him being in this rotation is so annoying now. And I was bitching about it before. It's like, why do you use a first-round pick, not play a guy on a team that was thought to be developing? Well, they came out of the gate hot and just sat him. That's kind of what it is. And now things haven't been going well. Hey, let's give Agbaji some run. 16 minutes, 18 minutes of cardio a night.
I don't hate... I would have liked to get to a little bit THT now that I'm looking at it. I don't trust the minutes all that much. But at 3,600, small forward only... it's not like the biggest regret I'm going to have. It stresses me out a little bit because I can see it. It might be something that I try to swap to. Wait, because that game didn't lock yet, right?
No.
Yeah, that's the 4:00 start.
Yep, last game.
All right, so he's 3,600, small forward only. Like, he's probably worth... He would have been worth offloading some Taurean Prince for. Like, I have Dyson Daniels at 3,300 right now. I don't know if that's occupying a small forward spot or not, but that's fine to me.
Yeah.
So you want to hear some heavy exposures?
Yeah, because bet it starts and ends with Walker Kessler and Jordan Clarkson, because oh my God, do I have infinity of them.
I've got 80% Anthony Edwards.
Beautiful.
I've got 78% Malik Beasley.
78%?
Yeah. This is a guy that played 32 minutes.
Yeah, I know.
On Saturday's game and didn't play the final 8 minutes.
Unreal.
So there's that. Jordan Clarkson, 63.
Mm-hmm. I'm right there with you.
Walker Kessler, 62.
Yep.
And then I get a fun one that I don't think anybody like. This is the stand that could get me something good. I've got Darius Garland in half my lineups.
What?
Yeah.
Where did that come from?
Light ownership projection, 7,500. So to me, mildly underpriced. Upward minute trajectory if you need it. This is a guy that can play upwards of 38, 39 minutes. Pelicans, not that good.
True.
I don't know where it came from, though, for real. I had him under owned at least a little bit. Kyle Anderson, 50. Taurean Prince, 50. Jared Allen, 44. Mitchell Robinson, 39. And then it falls off a cliff.
Yeah, the thing I'm going to be the most upset about is I got to basically no Pascal Siakam. I got to tons of Julius Randle, 38%. So that is my, this could absolutely trek me kind of spot, but he's at power forward. Yeah. I think just because of that, it's starting to show up a little bit. Naz Reid, I can play at a center spot, but center became valuable just because of Kessler for me. That's a guy that I wasn't planning to get to in that kind of a clip. And Jared Allen was always a no-brainer. So that's just become a big part for me, where now I'm just upset. If I had noticed more of it, I would have gotten to just a ton more Pascal Siakam there. Gave you guys all the note to make sure you got there. But Julius Randle, yeah, that's my big stand for the day.
Yeah. Julius Randle is your Darius Garland.
Correct.
Yeah. look, I'm never going to be mad about getting like, the best or second best scorer on any one of these teams on a 5-game slate as a stand. I've had way more of way shittier guys than Darius Garland in the past. That's for sure.
I love how Anthony Lamb, I was just obsessed getting like 3x, and now I'm like at the field.
None of them.
Yeah, he became like so much less appealing. I think I just boosted him to like 26 to make sure that I got a little bit, because I would not be happy if he played 28, 30 minutes and I didn't have a couple shares.
Well, that was wild. Could have done without that news at the moment that it happened, but what are you
and we're still waiting on way more news. That's the fun part.
We are. Vincent. Caleb Martin will play. So Vincent, Hero, okay. Butler, Martin, Adebayo in. That's all we've gotten since the start here.
Cool.
Oof. Part of me wants to get to a little bit of THT, but I just don't have a natural pivot for it. And it's not something I want to re-crunch for.
I think you want to do it.
Really?
You might as well. We're on a show for 25 minutes. We're already here. You might as well.
Oh, no. I mean, I don't want to re-crunch just for Talen Horton-Tucker, because I don't expect to get a lot. Like, it's not as if I look at him and he's grading out as some guy that I need to have a ton of.
I have 14%. So for what it's worth.
Like, if it's
more than you'd expect.
What in the hell? Oh, I was like, what is happening with that filter? But I forgot that it was showing the first game and the last game in my DraftKings stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, all these guys with zero salary. Like, this is not how this works. 2, 3, 4.
Jamal
5,
Cain inactive.
6.
Is this NFL? Are we getting the inactives 24 minutes beforehand? What's going on?
Okay, so like, as of right now, I have by a hair Corey Kispert ahead of Talen Horton-Tucker.
How much Kispert did you end up playing?
DeLon Wright ahead of Talen Horton-Tucker. Now, that's not to say that he could play 26 minutes and be a real problem to me. I think he's got a ton of minutes fluctuation, but I don't have him projecting as someone in that range that I just I need to re-crunch for. How much did I get of Kispert? 12%.
Yeah. Let's go to the Boom Bust tool and take a look. This will be fun.
I don't have a giant issue there. Yeah, SMP said, on the plus side, once Gobert gets ruled out, you'll have to re-crunch anyway.
Yeah, that's exactly it, man.
It's true.
Nas Reed, 100%. That's just a dude that you're going to have in every lineup. Every lineup you humanly possibly can will turn into Nas Reed, so then that'll be fun. Again, I would be very upset if Gobert doesn't play. I wouldn't be as upset with Anthony Edwards as long as we got it before the Atlanta-Miami game. If we got it afterwards, I just don't know what to do with money. What would you possibly do with that money?
I don't know.
You're
Nothing.
Screwed. Yeah, you're legitimately jizzed. Brutality. Because I already have Jordan Clarkson. That's the only other expensive piece in the game outside of Rudy Gobert. So if they don't play before 12:30, actually, this is probably a good note when we're thinking about this from just a game theory perspective. If you're building a lot of lineups, like Josh, myself, if you're building multiple, 20, 40, 50 plus lineups, 150, Bam Adebayo, Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, I would probably just get to more of them if we don't have that news in the next 22 minutes, because you do not want to get held hostage by 90% Anthony Edwards getting ruled out like I would currently have. I should probably be trimming it down just even slightly. It's not like I'm not going to be over the field. And yeah, would I want to have 100%? If he's going to be a little bit lower owned, if everybody's doing the same thing, yeah, I would. But I don't think everybody's going to be doing the same thing. I think you want to get to a little bit more Bam, Trae Young, DeJounte Murray, Jimmy Butler, just so that money's getting spent, and then be able to fit them in with Utah and Minnesota pieces.
Agreed. The good thing is, at least the way that my lineups are built, I'll have all sorts of flexibility because most of my lineups have half of the damn late game.
Yeah.
Man, my currently winning is just going to be $0 until 5:30.
Mine'll be 0 winning until 8:30, so it's perfect.
Well, that was going to happen either way.
Yeah, thanks, bud.
I do really wish it's something that I've always wanted to sit down and try to program to have like a real place to sweat. It's like the thing that we're missing most in NBA.
Hang on, tell the people about this because I'm extremely intrigued about it. There's two things that I always want to know from every DFS player. I want to know a sorting process, and because it's the least talked about thing, period. It's probably the one thing that people just never discuss. And you're talking about crunching out 1,000 lineups, and for me, it's usually around 500. And how do you pick out the best lineups out of your crunch? And then, how do you go about your software? This is you specific. Like, how do you possibly have everything updating on your end the way that like a DK Live does it?
So what I do, let me just copy one column of data quickly before I forget to do it. So I changed a projection and now I don't have the same lineups that I wanted selected. So for me, I grab the live box score stats. I do it very generically too, just to make sure that I'm like pointing in the right direction. I grab the live box score stats and then I just prorate whatever's happened to whatever's left. So like if there's, at halftime, I just take whatever a guy has at halftime and I add on half of his projection as well. I try to be pretty generic about it. If anybody gets injured or ruled out, I have an override column that will just zero out their future so they don't project to accrue anything. That way I can add up everything for the 2,000 lineups that I crunched, sort by the overall projection, and see if any of the lineups that I created out of my 2,000 crunch go to the top. You have no chance to win a GPP if a lineup that you played isn't the highest projected lineup of anything that you crunched. So like mine needs to be there, and it probably needs to be a couple points clear because you're taking 2,000 and putting that into a 16,000 person field. So like they need to be sorting to number 1, number 2, number 3 in that spot. Otherwise, I know that like I just don't have a chance to win that day. But that's what I do. Basketball Monster has a really good live scoring page that makes it like really easy to grab quickly.
It's awesome. See, that's the stuff that I love. I love that. I love things that I haven't seen before and then you kind of take them for granted after a while. It's like, I don't know. It's like when DK finally got everything updated for scoring where it wasn't like the 10 minutes. Like, I don't think we had that all season long for NFL the last couple of years. Well, last year, 2 years, where it was like, oh, it usually takes 10 minutes to refresh. Like, it was pretty instantaneous because Showdown is such a big part of what they're doing that they wanted to make sure it was as good as possible. You don't even think about it anymore. For us OGs back in like 2016, 2017, you didn't know how you were doing for like 20 minutes in tournaments. You had no idea. It was like a long delay. Somebody would score a touchdown and be like, all right, well, I think I'm going to be up there because Tyler Lockett just caught a touchdown and, I'm going to get the Russell Wilson points, those points. I think I'm going to be in 5th. I think I'm going to be moving up. And you just had no idea. You kids, you got it made for you.
It's a good time. Still don't have back in the day. If this equals X, I'm like,
did you see the Okungwu was starting over not Capella?
Yes. To me, not all that interesting. Like, you want to still give him 28 minutes as a starter or something. I think that's more than reasonable. But at the same time, he's already priced to be the starter. So like, I can't begin to care.
I think probably makes me like John Collins still.
I wish I would have had a little bit more DeJounte Murray, but let's see. That's 8,100. Yeah, that would have to be some sort of recrunch process. I was hoping that somehow DeJounte Murray was like the same price as Darius Garland, and I could just start clicking on random lineups and just like take 10 lineups of Garland, soften the blow, and get a little bit more Murray. So I've liked Murray all day, and I'm 2xing what we had projected for Murray, but it doesn't matter. Any new news?
Nope. I'm manufacturing ways to just get to a little bit more Jimmy Butler, a little bit more Bam, because again, I do not want to get left holding the complete bag. And if I got to more of those guys, I'm going to have cheap pieces to fit into lineups already. For me, it's just I want to get to the access of as much Anthony Edwards, but I'm right now too heavy on him. And I think the risk is probably too high with 16 minutes left until lock of the Miami-Atlanta game, where I just don't want to get held hostage to like having lineups with 47,000 in salary used.
Trying to look through chat now, see if anything's popping up. Evidently, TJ McConnell's playing well.
So glad I didn't play the FanDuel slate, especially for that. Saw he was just getting crazy high ownership again.
10 points, a board, 3 assists, and a steal in 6 minutes.
I'm so happy he wasn't on the DK slate. That's incredible.
I mean, I said it on the strategy show this morning that like the moment that we talked about how he's not that interesting of a play because the price has climbed is the moment that he's just going to go out there and do it again.
It's incredible. Wait, CJ Stroud's leaving for the NFL? How did I miss that today? Miss that news.
The quarterback?
You can make $15-20 million a year being the quarterback for Ohio State and stay in college. And, you know, he's going to be a top 10 pick no matter what, like whether it's this year, next year. I don't know.
NFL, I'm going. Especially if I'm a quarterback. Get the NFL money as fast as you can. It's just, there's too much violence in the NFL. NBA, or if you're a college basketball prospect, I want to be like, I'm going to UCLA and I'm taking a giant bag. I'm going to USC and it's like, pay me like you paid OJ Mayo.
That was USC season. That was good stuff. UCLA. It's gonna get weird.
Would be fun.
I can't believe Kentucky is as bad as what they are this year coming off of NIL. Like, I didn't think they would be the ones most affected by this, but it seems like they might be. Like some of the
want to
lusters.
live there.
Just saying, now that's the thing. Like USC,
I'd be going to Tulane and shit now.
Yeah.
Just go to New Orleans.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
Whatever did happen to OJ Mayo, I have an OJ Mayo story. I guarded him when I was 16 years old. I held him to 48 points. It was good. Go me.
That's great.
I held him to 48. That's why he didn't put up a 50 spot on me in AAU ball. That was good.
I had a buddy that played and guard. He was actually like properly good. Like ended up going and playing for Albany. But he had to guard Kevin Love in like an AAU tournament. And he was like, I held him to 30 and 18. He was averaging 45 and 30 or something stupid.
Yeah, dude. Like some of those select camps and like whatever, like AAU tournaments, you'd go to Minneapolis, Chicago, Vegas. We'd go all over the place and play. We had a pretty good team. We had 5 Division I athletes, and none of us ended up playing basketball in college, which is kind of wild. We all played D1 sports, but in sports that weren't basketball. But we were just kind of like athlete. Like I just shot. I just sat around the perimeter and shot threes. Everybody else was like big physical human beings. And we would play in some of these select tournaments where it's just like, you think you're pretty good because you've stacked the best players from South Dakota, Minnesota, and everything together. And then you play one LA team and you're toast. You are just so dead. You have no idea what basketball is anymore. It's kind of like also played like a select soccer tournament against a team from Ireland one time. And the difference between European football when you're 13 years old and then what you did just running around like, chickens with their heads cut off here in America. It was such eye-opening experiences when I was a kid. I was lucky to be good at sports, but like also very unlucky because I realized that there was no chance I could do anything professionally other than hit a golf ball, maybe.
I remember the first time that I went to like a real basketball camp. That was sobering. I was like, oh, I don't have any future at this at all. I just didn't know. And then I remember playing in a soccer tournament very much outside of town. And that was just, we got embarrassed.
Oh my God. Yeah. Played pickup ball at Iowa State. The number 1 high school basketball team in America was Ames High School at Iowa State. So when I was in school there and they would come play pickup ball, just Doug McDermott and Harrison Barnes on the same high school basketball team. Totally normal things.
Can you imagine?
It was just ridiculous. 15, 16-year-old kids just murdering us. It was hilarious.
Well, that's what I talked about the game that I saw. The guy that I was talking about that guarded Love, he was on a team with Gerald Henderson, Wayne Ellington. They played Oak Hill when it was Michael Beasley, Ty Lawson, Nolan
So this
Smith.
guy was a baller is what you're getting at.
I mean, he was the 3rd best player on the team, but there was a pretty big chasm between him, Henderson, and Wayne.
Unreal.
Which he would agree with, but he was like actually good. I mean, he was a big guy, so like he's probably 6'9", something like that.
If Udonis Haslem played in college right now, would he win National Player of the Year?
Probably not.
I don't think so. Like, I think they've gotten so much better now. But if Udonis Haslem,
he's
today,
6'7".
Yeah. If Udonis Haslem played, so let's take like back end. Who's the worst player in the NBA who would have a chance to win National Player of the Year this year? This is what you come to the Live Before Lock on and dealt with my ridiculousness for 80 minutes to get to the questions that really matter.
Anybody that's like not doing a great job of creating their own shot in the NBA would aggressively create their own shot in college now.
Because think about it this way. Didn't Agbaji win Player of the Year last year? Or he came close?
I have no idea.
He won Most Outstanding Player in the tournament is what he won.
Like, what would be a good example? Like, nah, he's too good. Like, here's a real good one. If you just dropped Jalen Green in college for the past 3 years, we would look at him very differently.
I would agree with that.
Because he would ether college. He'd be the best athlete on the floor basically at all times. No one would be able to stay in front of him.
Probably did the same thing with Killian Hayes.
He would look a lot better. He couldn't look worse.
That's not very nice.
No.
Evan Fournier. That's a really good one, Jordan Klein. Evan Fournier would go out and get a bucket. Like, I think that's the kind of mold player who would be the guy who could throw up the insane. Like, you got Dan Team there in Gonzaga, who's up for National Player of the Year. He can't even make it in the NBA. Like,
still looking through names here.
Wayne Ellington would be up there for me.
Not
like
anymore.
The worst possible player who's on an NBA team, or would presumably be on an NBA team, that would still have a chance to finish top 5 in National Player of the Year.
I bet someone like Terrence Davis would do exceptionally well in a way that you wouldn't expect.
This is incredible. Terrence Ross, I like that one a lot. Bjorgo, that's a good one. Tyler Hero. Tyler Hero's way too good. Like,
he would be the unquestioned winner.
Yeah, he would. We're talking who is the worst possible guy.
I am not a Tyler Hero fan. He would be the far and away number 1 player in college basketball, and it would not even be close. This is a guy that can create efficient offense at the NBA level right now.
Correct. Because the best basketball player that is, college or below right now is a dude in France. So Wembanyama, not close. And, there's guys, G League that are up there that are better than are playing in college right now. But I'm just curious because I don't think people understand when we say, oh, this guy sucks, he didn't put up fantasy scores, how freaking good they are compared to anything you know.
I got one that's like, I don't think that he's any good, but it'd be really interesting. Like, just because he plays now and gets minutes for the team, it's different. But it'd be really interesting to see Dennis Schroeder do it, because he's so inefficient, but he would have like 30% usage and just score at will.
Yeah, I think he would win it. I think he would have a legit chance to win it. But like, I think he might be even too good to go into the conversation. I think you're looking at like a hot hand off the bench. Terrence Davis is probably the best one you've said so far, where I'm pretty sure he would win National Player of the Year.
Do you think Josh Primo has eligibility left?
Should he go back? It can't get worse. If you're going to throw something out there, this is the stream for it. Oh, Jordan Klein just buried his head.
How about Chetty?
Chetty, I don't think would finish top 5. I think that's a good one, because now we're on the fringe of like, I don't think they would finish top 5. I think they would be serviceable. They'd be a Christian Braun last year with Kansas, where they'd be really, really good and looked at as a really good basketball player, but wouldn't jump into like a top 5. Reggie Jackson. Yeah. Now we're talking.
That would be a fun one.
Reggie Jackson, put him in the time machine, throw him back. Let's go. Actually, no, just have him go play in college. I think that would be phenomenal.
I'm still scrolling.
Moses Moody's too good. Reggie Bullock, not good enough.
Yeah. Not the right kind of player.
Yeah. Emmanuel Quickly is a good one, but like, I think he has purpose in the NBA already. I think he's probably too good for our conversation.
I mean, his stats would be insane.
Yeah.
Like most of these people would hang a crazy stat line, that's for sure. But like some guys you can only impose your will on the game so much.
Yeah, because everybody we've said too, it's like none of them would average a triple double. Like we're talking about a guy that would just go, like there's no player like that that's really been in college for a while.
No.
They've come from Europe or they've played G League ball. Like
I really hope that college basketball gets back to what it was now that you could just give kids bags.
Beautiful.
We're like, there's no incentive to be a late first round pick if you know that you can make a couple million and still hang out on campus and just do whatever.
It's huge.
Yeah. And like, you're going to be able to do that. If you can be an exceptional college basketball player that brings notoriety to your university, you can get enough money to offset that first round, like late first round deal.
Totally. It's a thing where you could have multiple pieces of your starting five making over $1 million a year in college basketball very, very shortly. Like it hasn't happened yet. It's going to happen within the next 3 years. Same way that it's going to happen for the entire starting 11 for USC is going to be making a bag next year.
Oh, I mean, think about like Oregon.
Oh yeah. That Nike Phil Knight money. Oh yeah.
Right.
It's coming.
Right. If Oregon just happened to be in a place where the weather was always awesome, it would be insane.
Yep.
Like,
it's true.
Like, how good can Pepperdine end up being?
Oh, buddy. You're talking about a place that it's make believe. You drive that PCH. Jordan Klein knows. You drive that PCH and you go by Pepperdine. I went to a basketball game there a couple years ago, and it's make believe. Like you get up there, you're pulling up the hillside. There's this huge sprawling lawn out front. The sun's coming down. People are going to the beach with their books. You're just like, you got to be just joking me. Even crazier than that, UCSB, like University of Santa. What?
TJ McConnell has 21 points, 4 assists, 2 rebounds, and a steal in 12 and a half minutes.
I need to see Jesse on Twitter right now. Hang on.
He scored more points.
He didn't play NBA today.
He scored more points right now, with 4 minutes left in the second quarter, than all but 3 people from the Charlotte-Boston game.
Oh my gosh. That is the craziest stuff I've ever seen. Reasonable game.
Unbelievable. Gary Trent on one so far. 6 points, 3 boards, an assist, and a block.
So basically, of course, Pascal. Yeah, Siakam,
3,
Trent,
1-1.
Those are the ones. 8. Yeah, that's. I knew that was going to be full pain. I knew I was in for pain with that one.
Major pain.
Major pain. I knew that there was no way around it. You go around saying, "Hey, make sure you get to this guy because I'm not getting enough," and it just makes sense. And he's going to put up 70, so that's cool.
Well, it is time for us to get out of here. We have a No House Advantage show coming up next. Jordan, are you running that bad boy? All righty. Well, then we're going to get on out of here. Thank you to No House Advantage. Stick around to watch the No House Advantage NFL show. Eric, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
This was fun. Had a great one. Thanks, everybody.
There we go. Ignore everything that Eric said earlier in the show, but good luck today, everybody. Keep your eye on the news, at least for the next half hour, and we'll talk to you a little bit later. Back to normal schedule tomorrow. Good luck today, everybody. Peace.